3 days to go. It's Wednesday, and we have a new premium. And by the way, thanks to the folks who stepped up yesterday. We as I said, we have $40,000 we have to raise by the end of this week, and we raised $7,000 yesterday. That was great. A lot of people called in and made $120 gifts to get either my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, or one of the 2 new T-shirts, and that was super. Thank you, if you're one of those folks who called in. And if you're not one of the folks who called in and made a contribution yesterday, please do so today. We have a new premium. It's Trump toilet paper, suitable for blowing your nose on as well. It's that time of year, right? With a $30 contribution, and they'll throw in a bumper sticker as well. So that's is with $30, right? Do I have that right? Yes, $30. So with a $20 contribution, of course, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or your car magnet. The car magnet is, kind of cool. It's one of these get out the vote things. I'm voting. Are you? With a $30 contribution, you have the world famous Trump toilet paper. With a $50 contribution, it's the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. With the $75 contribution, the Thom Hartmann mug, the Tag Your It mug. With the $120 contribution, get an autographed copy of my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, or a Ask Me About Free Speech TV T-shirt, or the Just Effing Vote T-shirt. Those are all $120 gifts. With a $240 gift, we can hang out together on the internet, and just a relatively small group of us will schedule, enough of these that they're never, they're never large. They're always small enough that people can get together and be heard and ask questions and all that kind of thing. That's with the $240 gift. With a $300 gift, you've got the special Free Speech TV Get Out the Vote pack. There's a set of Free Speech TV host postcards that you can send to your friends and family. There is the car magnet to get out the vote. I'm voting, are you? There is the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and you get the autographed copy of The Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $360 gift, you get the complete set, the Hidden History book set, The Hidden History of the Guns and the Second Amendment, my book about how the Second Amendment was passed to protect the slave patrols in the South, specifically in Georgia and Virginia and South Carolina, or the Carolinas, and how the gun industry basically conned or lobbied, let's say, the Supreme Court. I don't think Scalia was conned. I think he was a willing accomplice. But anyhow, that's the guns and the Second Amendment. Then also there's the Hidden History of the U.S. Supreme Court, the Betrayal of America, which talks about how the Supreme Court has betrayed us with regard to a whole variety of things. They've helped deconstruct unions. They've helped tear apart the middle class. The Supreme Court. They have empowered. They've empowered corruption throughout our political system by making it legal for billionaires and corporations to throw as much money at politicians as they want. All of these things, none of these things were done legislatively. In fact, in every case, they struck down legislation that protected union rights and protected worker rights and protected the middle class and protected, or kept money out of politics. And the Supreme Court knocked down all of these things. And the book is a damning indictment. And at the end, there is a way that Congress can actually get around the Supreme Court that was actually originally suggested during the Reagan administration by John Roberts, who's now the Chief Justice. So from the horse's mouth, as it were, I think it's one of the more important books I've written, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court. And of course, then finally, The Hidden History of the Republican War on Voting. And this goes through, how we got here, the Powell memo, how the Republicans basically reinvented themselves in the 70s and 80s after the Supreme Court decision, and how they fine-tuned voter suppression through the 80s and 90s, how it was used as a blunt instrument by George W. Bush and his brother Jeb in the 2000 election, how they, in the 2002, with the Help America Vote Act, how Republicans pushed through legislation that would kind of fine-tune the whole system so that they could easily and effectively suppress the vote. and then how they've been doing it ever since, and how it's showing up in this discrepancy between exit polls and actual polls. So with a $360 contribution, you get all three of those books, and they're all small, short, easily read books. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and come visit us, once all this stuff settles down out there. But the bottom line is we need to keep Free Speech TV going. We need to keep this show on the air. We are way behind in our fundraising, and we need your help. We really do need your help. So please call now if you haven't already, 877-378-8669. We just have 3 days to go. Please call now. This program needs your help. This network needs your help. Please help us make it all happen and keep it going. 877-378-8669. Thank you. So it's Wednesday, and special new premium with a $30 gift. You get a roll of Trump toilet paper. It doesn't get better than that, because this is the guy who brought us the coronavirus epidemic here in the United States. People are dying because of this man in the White House. 2 years ago, they shut down the offices in the Department of Homeland Security and the National Security Council that were in charge of dealing with pandemic diseases. Why did he shut them down? Well, because Barack Obama put them into place during the Ebola epidemic, or maybe it was during the swine flu epidemic in 2009. This is terrible. So please, call now, vote by telephone, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV, and get your Free Speech or your Donald Trump toilet paper.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, happy Wednesday. Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you, live from Portland, where yesterday we got notice that we have now officially one case here in Portland. There's 300 people who they're looking at, and I think there's, around a dozen that have been confirmed in the state. But this was one right in Portland that hadn't gone anywhere, hadn't done anything, had just been hanging out in town, and boom, he's got coronavirus, or she, we don't know. So, it's spreading. We're all Seattle and New Rochelle. And it doesn't mean that we need to be freaking out and frightened. It means that, we need to do something. We need to be thinking about this, talking about this, moving forward in a reasonable fashion. But just consider where we're at and why we're here. 2 years ago, the day after it's just absolutely mind-boggling. The day after the 100-year anniversary of the 1919 flu, right? 2 years ago, or almost 2 years ago, the Trump administration shut down. The New York Times, by the way, their what do you call it? A blog, or it's I guess it's really a podcast. It's called The Daily. Tells this story brilliantly today. It's really worth checking out. But anyhow, they shut down the two high-level offices in the White House that were responsible for dealing with the pandemic. One in the Department of Homeland Security, the other in the National Security Director's office, or the Office of National Security, and the NSC. And they no longer exist. The two offices within the White House that were designed to deal with pandemics, that had scientists within them, that were independent of politics, they literally no longer exist. John Bolton fired them all and shut them down. And because of Trump's incompetence and hubris, his administration was unwilling to make the World Health Organization test kit, which was available all over the world in January. He was unwilling to make that available anywhere in the United States. It's still not available anywhere in the United States. No, instead, we've got to develop our own. We're America, right? We're not the World Health Organization. That's one of those UN things. So thus, large parts of the United States are probably in a similar situation to Seattle and New Rochelle, but just don't know it because they haven't had enough people show up at the hospital yet, deathly ill. the good, once again, and it bears emphasizing, the good news is the vast majority of people who get this disease don't even know they have it. They think they have a bad cold or a terrible flu that lasts for, that seems to hang on for a couple of weeks. The bad news is they're spreading the virus, and that, thinking that they just have a cold or the flu, because there's no test. If you show up at your doctor's office or at a hospital ER right now saying, I think I may have the coronavirus, if you're not ready to be checked into into an isolation ward, if you're not that sick, in all probability, you're going to be turned away. And even if you are that sick, in many places, you're going to be turned away. This morning on CNN, Poppy Harlow and Jim Sciutto interviewed a guy from his hospital bed in, I believe it was Rome, Georgia. It was rural Georgia. And he was a former law enforcement officer. And he had the coronavirus, and he had nearly died from it. He came into the hospital on Monday of last week and said, I am really sick. And they said, yep, you've got pneumonia. And they did a test for the flu, and they said, but you don't have the flu, so we're going to send you home. And so he went home, and then on Friday, he called him up, and he said, I feel like I'm dying. And they said, well, come on in. And so he went in, and they finally did a coronavirus test on him, and sure enough, he's positive. So they've got him in this isolation room, and over the weekend, he got real sick. But today, he was well enough. He was clearly still very sick, but he was well enough to talk to Poppy and Jim, right, on CNN, live on CNN. Louise and I are sitting there watching this, and Poppy is talking to him, and she says, tell us about the rest of your family. And he's like, well, my wife is a flight attendant, but she didn't get sick. And we're like, what? And so Poppy says, well, has she been tested? No, she hasn't been tested. I mean, the guy's in isolation in a hospital. Now, his wife isn't flying right now because her husband has been tested positive with the coronavirus, but she had been flying before Friday. She had presumably been flying on Monday when he first got really sick. Up and down the East Coast is how he described it. It was amazing. I mean, large parts of the U.S. are probably in a situation similar to Seattle and New Rochelle, just 2 weeks ahead, or 3 weeks ahead. And we don't know. We don't know where they are. We don't know how they're happening because the test kits are not available. You can go on Amazon and get a test kit for HIV. You can go on Amazon and get a test kit for gonorrhea. You can go on Amazon and get a test kit for syphilis. But you can even get a test kit for the flu. They're expensive. They're like $90. But if you don't want to go to the doctor or go to your hospital or something, you can buy a test kit, on Amazon or presumably in your local drugstore for the flu, which is a virus. But if you want a test kit for corona, sorry, buddy. Donald Trump does not want that happening. We need a national mobilization right now to prepare our hospitals and our doctors' offices for what's coming. We need easy and accessible testing in every community in America today. And because the Trump administration is unwilling to make this happen, and instead is giving us happy talk, and now you've got the Republican governor of Florida saying, oh, everything's just fine, don't worry. We don't have any cases down here. We all need to carefully recalibrate our lives and avoid unnecessary exposure to crowds and public events. And finally, and I think most importantly, Mike Pence, who is supposed to be in charge of this, if he is actually listening to the health professionals around him, Mike Pence needs to convene a meeting of the cabinet and say, we are going to start the process of invoking the 25th Amendment to get Donald Trump out of the White House and make me president so that we can do something about this to protect our nation. I never thought I'd say, let's make Mike Pence president, but oh my God. Meanwhile, in the Senate, the Republicans, Mitch McConnell, has laid out his plan for the coronavirus. It's amazing. He told reporters, this is yesterday, he told reporters that he would do exactly nothing. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to let Nancy Pelosi do it. This was his solution a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when Donald Trump shut the government down. They said, what are you going to do, Senator McConnell? He's like, well, we'll see what comes out of the House. That's what he said yesterday. He said he's going to allow Speaker Pelosi and Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, to negotiate this thing together. Isn't he sweet? Meanwhile, the conservatives who went to CPAC, the average people are freaking out because CPAC will not tell. In many places, you cannot get tested for exposure to the coronavirus unless you can tell them who you were in contact with, who was, who had the disease. And they're discovering that, the CPAC organizers, they told Ted Cruz, Doug Collins, Paul Gosar, Matt Gaetz, they told them that they were exposed to an infected person, who it was, when it was, where it was. But now they're saying, we're not going to tell the rabble. So you've got these CPAC regular attendees who are saying, well, one of them, Jack Prosobiec, complained, quote, there's one tier of people with information and another tier without. And so these CPAC conservatives are going on social media to complain that the name of the infected guy hasn't been released. These are the same people who wanted, the whistleblower's name to be released. Now they want, but this is a great piece over on Daily Kos about this by Hunter, who just writes some of the coolest stuff. He says, yes, it has dawned on the common rabble of CPAC that the important people are getting much better treatment from the conservative power class than they are. You idiots, Hunter writes to them, you are conservatives. Insisting that non-powerful people be treated worse than powerful people is the whole point of your movement. I mean, this is the conservative movement that says that there shouldn't be unemployment insurance because if you're out of work, hey, tough luck. I got mine. That's their slogan. This is the conservative movement that wants food stamps cut because, after all, poor people or people out of work, if they're hungry enough, maybe they'll go find a job. This is the movement that says that health care is not a right. Hunter writes, clean water is not a right. Decent air is not a right. If lower classes die of things that upper classes can spend their way out of, well, that's the inherent majesty, Hunter writes, of the capitalist system. This is brilliant. He says, of course you're not going to get the same health notifications as your own movement's VIPs, you dimwits. You spent the last 50 years steamed that unimportant rabble would dare ask for such a thing. Yes, this is certainly a moment. By the way, nobody's mentioning this, but yesterday when Trump announced that the executives of the health insurance companies are going to waive copays and deductibles on coronavirus treatment, what he didn't point out is that what allows him to ask or order that of them is a provision in the Affordable Care Act that the Trump administration and 20 Republican state governors are right now arguing before the Supreme Court, or will be in about a month, arguing before the Supreme Court should be blown up and taken down. I mean, this is how crazy it gets. Meanwhile, I got to tell you about Harold Hamm, this fracking billionaire, and the plans. This is why we need the 25th Amendment. Donald Trump's solution to the coronavirus problem, which is dampening world oil supply, coming up in 5 minutes. Stick around. It's 17 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, helping you win the water cooler wars.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stick around. Or back with more of the news, actually, with my story about Harold Hamm and all these guys. Then we'll get to your calls. And welcome back. Steve in St. Louis, Missouri. Hey, Steve, what's on your mind today?
Mr. Hart, I'd like to know, how is the virus affecting the Navy and other branches of the military? We
don't know yet. There seems to be a lockdown on information. Yesterday, a woman who has called the program before, whose son used to be a Marine. He got out. He couldn't find a job that had health insurance, and so he re-enlisted, with the National Guard instead of the Marine Corps, and he's stationed in Afghanistan. And she said that many of the people in his company in Afghanistan now has 5 confirmed cases of coronavirus. She said many of the people in his company are exhibiting the symptoms of this. They've got the high fever and the cough, and they're very, very sick. But the military will not test them for coronavirus, presumably because they don't have the test kits. But, who knows? I mean, Afghanistan is able to test, but our military can't. And so I put her in touch with Congressman Ro Khanna, and I got a note from him yesterday, and I sent her information to Mark Pocan as well. And I got a note from Ro Khanna yesterday saying that his chief of staff was on the phone with her as he was sending me the email. So I don't know how that's going to work out, but we've got at least 2 members of the United States House of Representatives who are looking into this, and maybe assuming that Maryland's story checks out, maybe with something that comes close to a whistleblower. But it's very concerning, Steve. I mean, the folks are in relatively confined spaces. I believe there's one military base. I forget which branch of service it is. That yesterday I read a story that they were either contemplating closing or closing because they thought they had a suspected case of coronavirus there. So.
All right. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Yeah. So let's just not expect that we're going to get a lot of good information out of the Trump administration. That's the bottom line. Donald Trump said, I don't want this cruise ship. It'll make my numbers look bad. Ada in Storrs, Connecticut. Hey, Ada, what's up?
Hi. Thank you, Tom, for taking my call. I just wanted to point out that Turkey isn't reporting any numbers, and I feel like this is really an example of how a corrupt government is, just kind of manipulating information and facts. So my brother is my brother-in-law, he's Turkish, and he basically he heard from in his country that some people believe a professor's report that the Turkish people have a certain enzyme that makes them immune to this virus. And this is obviously government propaganda that's being put out there. And I just feel like this is a crazy example of, what a government can do to really just disallow people to have facts. And I'm really just concerned here because in my community, I live very close to the UConn campus. And they're still kind of just wondering if they should close schools or not. And my child's daycare is inside the college campus. So, I mean, as of now, I'm still letting my child go to school, but I feel like we don't have any scope, really. Yeah. I mean, like you said, we're just kind of floating by. And then we also got a letter from a neighbor who posted it on Nextdoor, and she said she got a letter from an Italian friend, and they said they didn't, a week ago, didn't even think that Italy could shut down, and now they are.
Right. I just looked at the Johns Hopkins website, and Turkey is reporting 1 case.
Okay, as of yesterday, I saw nothing.
Yeah, and I understand the Philippines has not been testing for people, and Bolsonaro in Brazil was saying, we're not going to test for people. This is how dictators do it. But Ada, thank you for the story, and I wish you the very best. Thank you. Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. We also had an election last night, which I haven't gotten to yet, but, Bernie looks like he took 2 states, and Biden took 4. My sense of what's going on right now is that people are frightened. They're frightened of the coronavirus. They're frightened of Trump being incompetent. And Joe Biden was vice president for 8 years. You know that no matter what, he's not going to wreck the government. Not to say that anybody thinks Bernie will, but Biden's already been in the White House. And so people, during a time of crisis, people flee to safety or the perception of safety. Now, that may all change after Biden and Bernie debate on Sunday, and America has an opportunity to evaluate them side by side. But we'll see. There's also a report on CNN that at the top of the hour, the Sanders campaign is going to offer an update. I don't know what that means, but when I find out, I'll let you know. Anyhow, I told you I was going to tell you about Harold Hamm. Harold Hamm is a fracking billionaire. He made a ton of money drilling up Oklahoma for natural gas, and it literally created earthquakes. Oklahoma had never had earthquakes before. They were having swarms of earthquakes. It was from fracking. It was Harold Hamm's fracking, in part. So Harold Hamm yesterday called the White House. He said he hasn't spoken directly to the president, but he's talked to his people. Because Hamm lost $2 billion yesterday in the value of his company's stock because of Monday's oil price news, because of this oil price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia. And so he says the White House should be protecting America's interests at this time from being fairly disadvantaged by whatever government. And we're talking governments here, whether it be Russia or Saudi Arabia. Now, what does that mean? The White House should be protecting American interests. Well, let's turn to the Washington Post. Jeff Stein in today's Washington Post, the headline, White House likely to pursue federal aid for shale companies hit by oil shock, coronavirus downturn. Yes, we have a virus epidemic, and instead of the president wanting to spend billions of dollars to get testing kits into every local drugstore so you can find out, if your kid's got, is sick, whether it's coronavirus or not, or if you are. Instead of doing that, well, I'll just read you the first paragraph of the article in today's Washington Post. The White House is strongly considering pushing federal assistance for oil and natural gas producers hit by plummeting oil prices amid the coronavirus outbreak, as industry officials close to the administration clamor for help. White House officials are alarmed at the prospect that numerous shale companies, many of them deep in debt, could be driven out of business. Oh my God, these guys had a business model of selling junk bonds, which are held by banks and pension funds and insurance companies all over the country. You think there's not a crisis coming? These are BBB-rated bonds, these shale oil company bonds. And that is just one step above official junk. So they're technically not junk bonds, but, and they pay a higher interest rate. They pay 6, 5, 6, 7, 8%. Why? Because they're a risk. So this is their business model. Borrow a bunch of money in the bond market and use that money to frack up the country, sell the gas, make a pile of money, and then if everything goes bad, either get a government bailout or declare bankruptcy, like the coal companies are doing in West Virginia right now. They're walking away, they're declaring bankruptcy, so they're screwing their employees and stealing their pension funds and leaving the communities with just devastating pollution. Same thing here. So Trump and advisors have been taking calls, back to the Washington Post. Trump and his advisors have been taking calls since Monday from concerned energy sector allies who have voiced concern not only about oil prices, but also, this is the punchline. The oil executives who are calling Trump are expressing exasperation, not only, a quote from the Washington Post, not only about oil prices, but also privately warning against the administration supporting any sweeping paid sick leave policy. Do you get how sick and twisted these people are? We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Oh, and did I mention that at a news conference yesterday, Trump said we want to help out the hospitality, cruise, and travel industries and the shale industry will probably be included in that bailout. It's Wednesday, and we have a new premium. And by the way, thanks to the folks who stepped up yesterday. We as I said, we have $40,000 we have to raise by the end of this week, and we raised $7,000 yesterday. That was great. A lot of people called in and made $120 gifts to get either my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, or one of the 2 new T-shirts, and that was super. Thank you, if you're one of those folks who called in. And if you're not one of the folks who called in and made a contribution yesterday, please do so today. We have a new premium. It's Trump toilet paper. It's suitable for blowing your nose on as well. It's that time of year, right? With a $30 contribution, and they'll throw in a bumper sticker as well. So that's is with $30, right? Do I have that right? Yes, $30. So with a $20 contribution, of course, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or your car magnet. The car magnet is, kind of cool. It's one of these get out the vote things. I'm voting. Are you? With a $30 contribution, you have the world famous Trump toilet paper. With a $50 contribution, it's the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. With the $75 contribution, the Thom Hartmann mug, the Tag You're It mug. With the $120 contribution, get an autographed copy of my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, or a Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or the Just Effing Vote t-shirt. Well, those are all $120 gifts. With a $240 gift, we can hang out together on the internet, and just a relatively small group of us will schedule, enough of these that they're never, that they're never large. They're always small enough that people can get together and be heard and ask questions and all that kind of thing. That's with the $240 gift. With a $300 gift, you've got the special Free Speech TV Get Out the Vote pack. There's a set of Free Speech TV host postcards that you can send to your friends and family. There is the car magnet to get out the vote. I'm voting, are you? There is the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and you get the autographed copy of The Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $360 gift, you get the complete set, the Hidden History book set, The Hidden History of the Guns and the Second Amendment, my book about how the Second Amendment was passed to protect the slave patrols in the South, specifically in Georgia and Virginia and South Carolina, or the Carolinas, and how the gun industry basically conned or lobbied, let's say, the Supreme Court. I don't think Scalia was conned. I think he was a willing accomplice. But anyhow, that's the guns and the Second Amendment. Then also there's the Hidden History of the U.S. Supreme Court, the Betrayal of America, which talks about how the Supreme Court has betrayed us with regard to a whole variety of things. They've helped deconstruct unions. They've helped tear apart the middle class. The Supreme Court. They have empowered. They've empowered corruption throughout our political system by making it legal for billionaires and corporations to throw as much money at politicians as they want. All of these things, none of these things were done legislatively. In fact, in every case, they struck down legislation that protected union rights and protected worker rights and protected the middle class and protected, or kept money out of politics. And the Supreme Court knocked down all of these things. And the book is a damning indictment. And at the end, there is a way that Congress can actually get around the Supreme Court that was actually originally suggested during the Reagan administration by John Roberts, who's now the Chief Justice. So from the horse's mouth, as it were, I think it's one of the more important books I've written, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court. And of course, then finally, The Hidden History of the Republican War on Voting. And this goes through, how we got here, the Powell memo, how the Republicans basically reinvented themselves in the 70s and 80s after the Supreme Court decision, and how they fine-tuned voter suppression through the 80s and 90s, how it was used as a blunt instrument by George W. Bush and his brother Jeb in the 2000 election, how they, in the 2002, with the Help America Vote Act, how Republicans pushed through legislation that would kind of fine-tune the whole system so that they could easily and effectively suppress the vote. And then how they've been doing it ever since, and how it's showing up in this discrepancy between exit polls and actual polls. So with a $360 contribution, you get all three of those books, and they're all small, short, easily read books. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and come visit us, once all this stuff settles down out there. But the bottom line is we need to keep Free Speech TV going. We need to keep this show on the air. We are way behind in our fundraising, and we need your help. We really do need your help. So please call now if you haven't already, 877-378-8669. We just have 3 days to go. Please call now. This program needs your help. This network needs your help. Please help us make it all happen and keep it going. 877-378-8669. Thank you. So it's Wednesday, and Coming up on the Science Revolution this week, first, Trump is using the same logic on COVID-19 that he used for pesticides and pollution. And I'll explain why that's not a good thing. Nilay Marian, Forestry and Biodiversity Framework Coordinator with Friends of the Earth International, is here. Can we stop mass extinctions? Eva Hamer, Legal Coordinator of Direct Action Everywhere, drops by on her article, Why I Went Topless at Costco. Plus, geeky science. This is what happens when public transit is free. But wait, there's more. Tune in to the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are found. Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. We have a little more news here about coronavirus and cash and Washington State and a few other things, and we will get to those in the next hour. And in our third hour, we're going to be speaking with the guy who was the co-founder of Extinction Rebellion. This is going to be fascinating. But right now, let's pick up some phone calls. Tom in Beaver, Pennsylvania. Hey, Tom, what's on your mind today? Tom, you are on the air. Tom is apparently listening to his radio and not his phone. Steve in Seattle. Hey, Steve, what's on your mind?
Hi, is this me?
Yeah, that's you. You're on the air.
Yeah. I just wanted to talk about the election last night briefly. It wasn't a great night for Bernie, but I'm still, very much in support of him, and I will continue to campaign for him. But what I really wanted to talk about was my disappointment in the low voter turnout for young people. And
yeah, Bernie if you look
extremely well with them.
Yeah, if you look at the exit polls in every single state, Bernie carried, in some cases by huge majorities, people under 30. And Joe Biden carried by huge majorities people over 50, but the people under 30 didn't show up. They were a very small percentage of the electorate compared to the people over 50 who did show up.
Yeah, if we turned out in great numbers, we'd have this election locked up, no problem. But for some reason, we're just not doing it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's all.
There you go. Okay. Thanks a lot for the call, Jeff in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Hey, Jeff, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, Tom?
Good.
Buddy, it's always a pleasure to watch you. I heard the other person calling about active duty military or something. You were talking about that in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you what the VA is doing. I have a central number I can call, and I talked to this nurse in Pittsburgh, and they have an armed person that asks you, all these questions about the virus. And if you answer yes to some of them, they direct you to infectious diseases, which I think, I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but here's the bottom line. No VA facilities have testing kits.
Right.
And the other thing is, if you don't have it, they're doing it different at every VA facility. Like we're the one in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. They're just asking the questions, and if you say no to all of them, they're letting you go in. But on the other hand, they called me on a Saturday, and I never had that happen before, and they asked me those questions over the phone. So it's like a who's on first thing because each VA facility is doing it different.
Yeah. Yeah,
what I'm saying.
It's a scrambled
lack
mess.
Lack of information.
It's a hot mess, and it's a hot mess because 2 years ago Trump fired the people in charge of pandemics in the White House, in the Department of Homeland Security, and in the National Security Council, and he's put incompetent people in charge of everything else. And
he sure has.
And there, you can't get nowhere in the United States can you get the World Health Organization test kits. I mean, that's what they're using in a lot of these other countries, because they're not, quote, approved by the FDA. They're not approved by the FDA because we wanted to create our very own here. And, in other words, we're going to let some American company figure out how to do this and make a whole bunch of money off it. And as a result, months and months went by and lots of people are being exposed. And we're going to start seeing these numbers explode. And it's not a good thing. Jeff, thanks for the call. Thanks for the information. Mike in Lomita, California. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Yeah, I just got back from a 5-day trip to UK and was astounded to find out that now it's easier to get into the UK than it is to get out of a railway station if you've lost your ticket. Every year previously, you had these long lines of people waiting to be interviewed by a customs or rather border control officer, who would ask questions like, where will you be staying?
Right.
You turn in a document that has the addresses. Those guys are all gone now. They just have these machines to scan your passport, and there's not even anyone there to make sure that everyone shows a passport. You just walk through. So if you were a public health person and you wanted to trace someone's location who you suspected was infected, good luck. They're just out there and running free range.
Wow.
Also ran into some very surprising economic indicators, as I take them to be. One was that the airline that I was to use to get from London to the Scottish capital for the Sunday match crashed before I could even get on the plane. So I was in a scramble to get a replacement train ticket, and still, of course, missed the first half of the match.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have merchants around Paddington train station who are refusing to take legal UK tender because it has Bank of Scotland printed on it. In other words, rumor is supplanting rationality and reality in the Department of Commerce.
Yeah.
Now, their approach to it over there is to go through two phases. The first is the contain phase, which they're in now, which was urge everyone to wash their hands, which Prime Minister demonstrated on television improperly. And then the other part of it, of course, is if you're sick and you're sneezing and coughing, you should stay home. And they go eventually to the delay phase, which means that they ban public gatherings and close all the schools. And the questions in Parliament and in the newspapers have raised the point that schools are the source of nutrition for a large portion of kids who are living in poverty, like 1/3 of the single-parent kids in the country.
Is that the case? Are you talking about the UK or the United States here?
It's the UK.
Same problem. Well, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan did the same thing to both countries at about the same time. So, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So the whole thing is looking like it's going to get a lot worse. When I landed, there were 163 confirmed cases in Britain. And 4 days later, when I left, there were 319, nearly doubling in 4 days.
Yeah.
And as it catches on, of course, that will become much larger numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to try an interesting exercise. We all have little calculators on our phones. Open your little calculator app, type the number, in the calculator, type the number 1, and then times 2, in other words, doubling, all right? And if every person infects 2 people and the average time that happens is around 4 days, then basically, to be very conservative, let's say it was 7 days. So the rate of infection is going to double every week, right? So then just start hitting that equal sign, multiplying that 1 by 2, it becomes 2, multiply the 2 by 2, it becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16, and count how many weeks until you're hitting over 300 million people. And, it's somewhere in May, June, July, something like that. I mean, this is the old chessboard story. It's going to get intense. Mike, thanks a lot for the call. Zarko in Los Angeles. Hey, Zarko, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I love listening to your program. It's a great program. Every morning I do it. I have a question for you. Do you believe that under the current Constitution, America can make lasting progress?
Yeah, I believe so. The thing that has scrambled things under our current Constitution is the interpretation of it by the Supreme Court. I wrote a book about this. The Supreme Court says that our Constitution says that politicians can take as much money as they want from billionaires. I don't see that in the Constitution. Right? I mean, the Supreme Court says that the Constitution says that union members shouldn't have rights. I don't see that in the Constitution. Our Supreme Court keeps making these interpretations. The Supreme Court says that the Constitution says that corporations are people. I don't see that in the Constitution. So the problem, Zarko, I don't think is the Constitution. The problem, in my humble opinion, is the Supreme Court, and it's very problematic. Thanks a lot for the call, Joan in Greenville, North Carolina. Hey, Joan, what's up? Joan, you are on the air. Okay, let's try Karen in Tempe, Arizona. Hey, Karen, you're on the air. What's up?
Hi, how are you doing this morning?
Alive and kicking so far, so good.
You're good. I have a question. I hope it doesn't sound silly, but I'm a senior, and I'm concerned about food shortages. What are they going to do? I'm afraid, are we going to get to the point where they're not going to allow people to go to grocery stores? Or are we going to end up having the grocery stores closed? I went to the grocery store yesterday, and I overheard some employees talking, and the one clerk there was telling a customer that their suppliers are not providing them certain things. And then I was talking to a clerk who was stocking, and she told me, she says, they were completely out of sanitizers. They she had one mask, which I know the masks don't work supposedly, but
unless you're sick,
it
it prevents you from spreading it to other people. But yeah,
right. And she had one left, and I took it, and I got toilet paper. I know that some places have a run on toilet paper. People are hoarding. I understand from what she said that Costco was like barren because people had gone in there and hoarded a lot of things.
I've heard reports that some Costco stores are putting limits on how many rolls of toilet paper you can buy and stuff like that. A month ago, I was saying on this program that if this is the kind of situation, given the lousy public health response that we've got nationwide, we are the least prepared developed country in the world because we don't have a national health care system. And then on top of that, we've got Donald Trump in the White House. Two really big problems. And therefore, you may have to weather getting sick at home rather than going to the hospitals. The hospitals may well be overwhelmed in a month or so. And so, stock up. Have at least 2 weeks, probably ideally 3 or 4 weeks. The more I'm learning about this, the more I'm hearing that typically it actually lasts about 3 weeks. So, have a few weeks worth of food, just canned goods and rice and stuff that you can eat that will keep and that you would otherwise eat anyway. And, and stock up on toilet paper so you don't have to go out and get that. And beyond that, I don't think that there's, this is going to, I have a feeling, Karen, this is going to bring us together as Americans, as much as it's scaring us, from interacting with other people. I think this is, we're all learning the lesson that we're all in this thing together. And some of these formerly crazy ideas like, hey, a national healthcare system are starting to sound pretty good. Karen, I wish you the very best, and thank you for the call. We'll be right back. It's 47 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stick around. It's the talk media for the rest of us here on the Thom Hartmann Program. And welcome back. Lawrence in Seattle, Washington. Hey, Lawrence, thanks for listening to KBCS. What's up?
Good morning, Thom Hartmann. I think I might be calling to ask you to talk me away from the ledge, so to speak.
Which ledge is that?
The ledge where I begin to think that even though Trump did not planfully do this with forethought and malice, that he might take the opportunity of this virus. I know what New Rochester is doing. Sounds like a good idea, and Italy is doing some good things about restricting and isolating and stuff. But I think that our president might decide to use this as an occasion which he can use to declare martial law. So is that crazy?
No, it's not crazy, and you're not the first person to suggest it. And 2 weeks ago, I asked Congressman Mark Pocan if that was possible, And he said he would look into it. He would have his staff people look into it. I got an email from him this morning that they talked to the Congressional Research Service, and he sent me the actual document. Now, the Congressional Research Service is an independent agency that only does work for members of Congress. You and I can't ask them for a report, and many of their reports you and I can't even see. But a member of Congress can say to the Congressional Research Service, find out about X. And they will find out about it. They'll write an official report. And they will submit it. They will give it to that member of Congress or congressional committee or whatever. And the Congressional Research Service gave Congressman Pocan a report, which they had actually written a couple of years ago, about this very question. And apparently right now there is no provision at law or in the Constitution that would allow that to happen. They did note that Congress could pass such a law to allow that to happen, but there is no such law right now that would allow the president to declare a state of emergency in a way that would cause him to have the power to, for example, suspend elections. He's already declared a state of emergency on our southern border, in order to steal money from the military for his wall.
That's what prompted my worry, But anyway, thank you. That is somewhat reassuring.
Yeah, I thought it was. And Congressman Pocan will be with us on Friday, taking calls for the hour. So I'm sure he'll tell us all about it. Lawrence, thanks a lot for the call. It's great to hear from you. Michael in Cleveland, Ohio. Hey, Michael, thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up?
Hi, Tom. I just heard on the news a little while ago on a major new business channel that the president is meeting with some of his advisors now, and also Bill Kudlow, about permanently deleting the payroll tax. This is what they said in the news program.
Right, not permanently. They want to suspend it for a while. They're talking about for up to a year or maybe till this fall. Obama did this as part of the stimulus. He didn't delete the whole thing. He just reduced it by 1.5%, something like that. What it does is it reduces the flow of cash into Social Security. And when Obama did it, they passed a law allowing him to do it that provided for Social Security to be paid back out of the general fund for any money that they lost, so it didn't hurt Social Security. The guess is right now that Trump is not going to ask for that, although yesterday in a news conference he was specifically asked that by one of the reporters who said, will you repay Social Security? Because, it's about $1.7 trillion a year is how much that tax generates for Social Security. And he said, will you pay that back? And Trump said, oh, yeah, of course we'll pay it back to Social Security. But, this is a guy who has told 16,000 lies. So I'm not real confident that's how it's going to play out. We need to keep an eye on it, Michael. Excellent question. Thank you very much for the call. We'll be right back. Hey, did you know that Hillary Clinton actually won Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida in the 2016 election? It's on page 92 of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. Welcome back. It's 52 minutes past the hour. Michael in Howe, Michigan. Hey, Michael, what's up?
Hi, Tom. How you doing?
I'm well. What's up?
I have a question about the coronavirus and test kits. Mm-hmm. They said that that Medicare and Medicaid could pay for it, insurance could pay for the test kits, but I didn't hear anything about non-insured people being able to get the test for free, which is kind of important because you want everybody to get tested.
Right.
Am I right in hearing that there's no provisions for people without insurance?
Not yet. In fact, there's really no official provisions for people with insurance. All we have is the assurance of President Trump that he and health insurance executives are going to take care of us. But good luck even finding a test kit right now. So no.
Well, that's true. I just wanted to, give me something to talk to my congressman about.
Yeah, there you go. It's a good idea, Michael. Thank you for the call. Dan in Appleton, Wisconsin. Hey, Dan. Thanks for listening to Sirius XM.
Good morning. Yep. Hey, good morning. I want to preface this by saying I am a professional guardian for persons with disabilities. Many of them are seniors, a lot of people in nursing homes and home-ridden. Mm-hmm. And I've got an idea that I'd love to see somebody discuss, and that is to put have public health nurses going out, provide services for people at home keeps people in the home rather than out in the public spreading this virus.
Right.
They get the services that they need. And, when I'm hearing discussions about whether it's a permanent or temporary payroll tax, that does absolutely nothing to address the health care issue. It doesn't help people that can't go to work. If they don't have a paycheck, that payroll tax does nothing to help them. So, we could, for a lot less money, I believe, and I don't have the numbers. I haven't, I'm not a financial expert, but it seems to me that if we employed a team of public health nurses to go out and help people in their homes, there may be a really good way to address some of these really vulnerable people like my clients. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that idea out there. I'd love to see it discussed. So feedback. Any ideas?
Yeah, well, the part of the problem is, and in fact, I can't say this with certainty, but I have read reports that one of the theories about why 3 different nursing homes right now in Washington state are experiencing high levels of coronavirus is that they share employees. Whether these are direct care employees like nurses who work, in multiple places, or whether it is, some kind of specialized cleaning companies that deal with medical facilities and nursing homes. I haven't been able to find out. I haven't seen in any of the articles that I've read. But they think that it might be that, one or more of these employees in these nursing homes are moving from facility to facility and moving the virus with them. And so, the concern with a home health care nurse would be if that person becomes infected and carries it to other people. And because we don't have the kits available, and people are typically asymptomatic for 4 or 5 days, but are shedding viruses during that period of time, which is why and how this thing is spreading so rapidly, it could be problematic, Dan.
Yeah,
I mean, they would have to go in full moon suit so that they're not spreading something and they're not getting something.
Yeah, understood. And I think that's a good argument. I would suggest that the people that are in nursing homes are not necessarily prepared with the right types of equipment to address that issue.
That's correct.
A public health nurse going from one home to another is going to be more prepared and have the right types of equipment with them, with the idea in mind that they're going to be.
I agree. And these are the kind of conversations that you would think or you would hope that they would be having at the White House right now. But instead...
I would say, and
go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the frustration is when I hear something about a payroll tax suspension, that's great.
And let's bail out the fracking companies.
Yes, it does nothing to address the immediate health issues.
Right, and the fracking companies, I mean, the most amazing line in that entire Washington Post piece, was this. Trump and advisors, this is from the Washington Post today, Jeff Stein's article. Trump and advisors have been taking calls since Monday from concerned energy sector allies who have voiced concern and at times exasperation, not only about oil prices, but also privately warning against the administration supporting any sweeping paid sick leave policy. Don't do anything about the coronavirus except bail out the fracking companies. That's it. I mean, this is insane. We'll be back. We'll continue our conversation, and I got to tell you about why Washington State is actually very, very concerned about Trump right now.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
So it's Wednesday, and special new premium with a $30 gift. You get a roll of Trump toilet paper. It doesn't get better than that, because this is the guy who brought us the coronavirus epidemic here in the United States. People are dying because of this man in the White House. 2 years ago, they shut down the offices in the Department of Homeland Security and the National Security Council that were in charge of dealing with pandemic diseases. Why did he shut them down? Well, because Barack Obama put them into place during the Ebola epidemic, or maybe it was during the swine flu epidemic in 2009. I mean, this is terrible. So please, call now, vote by telephone, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV, and get your free speech or your Donald Trump toilet paper. It's Wednesday, and we have a new premium. And by the way, thanks to the folks who stepped up yesterday. We as I said, we have $40,000 we have to raise by the end of this week, and we raised $7,000 yesterday. That was great. A lot of people called in and made $120 gifts to get either my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, or one of the 2 new T-shirts, and that was super. Thank you, if you're one of those folks who called in. And if you're not one of the folks who called in and made a contribution yesterday, please do so today. We have a new premium. It's Trump toilet paper, suitable for blowing your nose on as well. It's that time of year, right? With a $30 contribution, and they'll throw in a bumper sticker as well. So that's is with $30, right? Do I have that right? Yes, $30. So. With a $20 contribution, of course, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or your car magnet. The car magnet is, kind of cool. It's one of these get out the vote things. I'm voting. Are you? With a $30 contribution, you have the world famous Trump toilet paper. With a $50 contribution, it's the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. With a $75 contribution, the Thom Hartmann mug, the Tag You're It mug. With a $120 contribution, get an autographed copy of my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, or a Ask Me About Free Speech TV T-shirt, or the Just Effing Vote T-shirt. Those are all $120 gifts. With a $240 gift, we can hang out together on the internet, and just a relatively small group of us will schedule, enough of these that they're never, that they're never large. They're always small enough that people can get together and be heard and ask questions and all that kind of thing. That's with the $240 gift. With a $300 gift, you've got the special Free Speech TV Get Out the Vote pack. There's a set of Free Speech TV host postcards that you can send to your friends and family. There is the car magnet to get out the vote. I'm voting, are you? There is the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and you get the autographed copy of The Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $360 gift, you get the complete set, the Hidden History book set, The Hidden History of the Guns in the Second Amendment, my book about how the Second Amendment was passed to protect the slave patrols in the South, specifically in Georgia and Virginia and South Carolina, or the Carolinas, and how the gun industry basically conned or lobbied, let's say, the Supreme Court. I don't think Scalia was conned. I think he was a willing accomplice. But anyhow, that's the guns in the Second Amendment. Then also there's the Hidden History of the U.S. Supreme Court, the Betrayal of America, which talks about how the Supreme Court has betrayed us with regard to a whole variety of things. They've helped deconstruct unions. They've helped tear apart the middle class. The Supreme Court. They have empowered. They've empowered corruption throughout our political system by making it legal for billionaires and corporations to throw as much money at politicians as they want. All of these things, none of these things were done legislatively. In fact, in every case, they struck down legislation that protected union rights and protected worker rights and protected the middle class and protected, or kept money out of politics. And the Supreme Court knocked down all of these things. And the book is a damning indictment. And at the end, there is a way that Congress can actually get around the Supreme Court that was actually originally suggested during the Reagan administration by John Roberts, who's now the Chief Justice. So from the horse's mouth, as it were. I think it's one of the more important books I've written, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court. And of course, then finally, The Hidden History of the Republican War on Voting. And this goes through, how we got here, the Powell memo, how the Republicans basically reinvented themselves in the 70s and 80s after the Supreme Court decision, and how they fine-tuned voter suppression through the 80s and 90s, how it was used as a blunt instrument by George W. Bush and his brother Jeb in the 2000 election, how they, in the 2002, with the Help America Vote Act, how Republicans pushed through legislation that would kind of fine-tune the whole system so that they could easily and effectively suppress the vote. And then how they've been doing it ever since, and how it's showing up in this discrepancy between exit polls and actual polls. So with a $360 contribution, you get all three of those books, and they're all small, short, easily read books. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and come visit us, once all this stuff settles down out there. But the bottom line is we need to keep Free Speech TV going. We need to keep this show on the air. We are way behind in our fundraising, and we need your help. We really do need your help. So please call now if you haven't already, 877-378-8669. We just have 3 days to go. Please call now. This program needs your help. This network needs your help. Please help us make it all happen and keep it going. 877-378-8669. Thank you. So it's Wednesday, and
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Helps when you plug in your microphone, doesn't it? And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Senator Sanders is giving a speech right now, and we're trying to track down a source for it that we can carry live here and share with you. Nate is busily typing or interneting or whatever it is Nate does. Googling, working. And I'll share with you, whatever he has to say, assuming that it's something consequential. And I'm guessing it is, or Bernie wouldn't be holding a press conference. I wanted to tell you, though, why Washington State is, one of the crises that Washington State has, in addition to being, we've got two major outbreaks going on right now, one in Washington State and one in New York, and in New Rochelle, New York. And both states have declared states of emergency, as have a number of other ones. Do we have Bernie? Okay, cool. Here's Bernie.
Forward to the debate in Arizona with my friend Joe Biden. And let me be very frank as to the questions that I will be asking Joe. Joe, what are you going to do for the 500,000 people who go bankrupt in our country because of medically related debt? And what are you going to do for the working people of this country and small business people who are paying on average 20% of their incomes for health care? Joe, what are you going to do to end the absurdity of the United States of America being the only major country on earth where health care is not a human right? Are you really going to veto a Medicare for all bill if it is passed in Congress? Joe, how are you going to respond to the scientists who tell us we have 7 or 8 years remaining to transform our energy system before irreparable harm takes place to this planet because of the ravages of climate change? Joe, at a time when most young people need a higher education to make it into the middle class? What are you going to do to make sure that all of our people can go to college or trade school regardless of their income? And what are you going to do about the millions of people who are struggling with outrageous levels of student debt? Joe, at a time when we have more people in jail than communist China, a nation 4 times our size, what are you going to do to end mass incarceration and a racist criminal justice system? And what are you going to do to end the terror that millions of undocumented people experience right now because of our broken and inhumane immigration system? Joe, what are you going to do about the fact that we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth, and are living with the fact that 500,000 people tonight are homeless and 18 million families are spending half of their income to put a roof over their heads? Joe, importantly, what are you going to do to end the absurdity of billionaires buying elections and the 3 wealthiest people in America owning more wealth than the bottom half of our people? So let me conclude the way I began. Donald Trump must be defeated, and I will do everything in my power to make that happen. On Sunday night, in the first one-on-one debate of this campaign, the American people will have the opportunity to see which candidate is best positioned to accomplish that goal. Thank you all very much.
So Bernie Sanders just gave a talk. There was some speculation that he was going to pull out of the race. I think that was like, hopeful Biden supporters. But he clearly is not. And he says he's looking forward to the debate on Sunday. He's taking questions from reporters now. But basically, that was not a concession speech. That was I'm in this and for the long haul. And, we'll see. We'll see what happens after the debate on Sunday. It's going to be Sunday night. I believe it's at 8 p.m. And we'll see if that changes the dynamic, if that changes, how people are polling. And, there's still well over half of the votes still to be collected. So step by step. Let's see here. John in Portland, Oregon. Hey, John, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Hope you're doing well and staying healthy. Hey,
doing my best,
I just want to let people know. Yeah. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Just want to let people know. I know I'm just a guy calling in, but my partner is a nurse at the VA here in Portland. And yesterday, he texted me while he was at work and let me know that they actually had one confirmed case in his department. I won't say which. And had 2 cases which were later confirmed from people coming in through the ER. Most frightening is that the CT department, I guess the lesions on the lungs or something they scan for with the CT scan.
Right.
And the CT department had no idea until after the fact. So all the people who performed the tests on these patients were exposed. The equipment was exposed.
Oh, my.
And there's been no leadership. There's been no guidance or advice. The VA is the government-run hospital.
Donald Trump ultimately is in charge of the VA. Actually, Donald Trump put 3 businessmen from Mar-a-Lago, none of whom are veterans, in charge of the Veterans Administration, and they're running it remotely from Mar-a-Lago. I realize that sounds totally bizarre, but you can Google it.
Oh, it's true. There's a picture of Trump when you walk into the VA, and this is, providing health care for a lot of veterans in America, a lot of whom are older.
Yeah.
And, I just want to let people know. I know I'm just a caller. I know I'm just a guy, but it's true.
Well, that yesterday I got the email from the Oregon Health Department. They've got a subscription newsletter that you can subscribe to that I did, where every day they send you an update on what's going on. And yesterday's update said that there was now 1 confirmed case. It's an older gentleman who's a veteran who is in the VA hospital. So I'm guessing that that's the person that your partner told you about, John.
So it is out then. Good.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want people to know. And what's the deal with the toilet paper? It's not a stomach flu. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face.
Yeah,
Wear a mask.
I think the reason people are hoarding toilet paper, that's just like an instinct. That happens when there's a flood or a tornado or whatever. When I grew up in Michigan, it was tornadoes and people would go buy toilet paper. But I think, B, the advice that has been given by numerous agencies and that I've been basically just parroting is, the majority of people who get this disease do not get hospital needs sick with it, but they do get sick. And they shouldn't be out in the community and they shouldn't be going to work. They should stay home and kind of shelter in place. Well, if you're going to have to stay home for the 2 or 3 weeks that it typically takes for this coronavirus to run its course, you're probably going to need extra toilet paper. You're probably going to need extra paper towel and those kind of products. I mean, just because most people buy these things every week or every other week. And you want to have 2 or 3 weeks worth of food in the house. I'm not talking about insane hoarding or, anything like that. But I think these are prudent steps, John.
Absolutely. I mean, I just hope people are safe. Don't freak out. But it would help if we could get some tests.
Right.
Too. That would be really helpful.
That's the big problem. And this was the point that the Oregon Health Department made in the newsletter that I got yesterday. And I mentioned this at the top of the show, this case, this first guy at the veterans at the VA hospital, had no known contacts with anybody else who had this virus and had not traveled anywhere recently. And so it's apparently a case of what's called community infection or community spread, which means that he got it from somebody who got it from somebody. And we don't know who the somebody is he got it from. I mean, it could have been a doorknob or a door handle in a retail store or a restaurant. It could have been anything. Could have been anywhere. Could have been on a bus. It could have been in the back seat of an Uber. I mean, that's what community spread is called. That's why it's called community spread, and that is clearly happening right now in Portland, and just like it was a few weeks ago in Seattle. And it should be a cautionary note for all of us. Don't freak out. Don't get hysterical. Do stock up in the anticipation of the possibility you may have to stay home for a few weeks, number one. And number two, don't go to any kind of events unless they're absolutely necessary. You don't have to go to church every weekend. You don't have to go to that movie. You don't have to go to that restaurant. Just chill out for a little while. John, thank you for the call. It's good to hear from you. I appreciate it. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
16 minutes past the hour on the Thom Hartmann Program. Right now, Biden, 800 delegates, Sanders, 660. It takes 1991 to win. And welcome back. Horace in High Point, North Carolina. Hey, Horace, what's on your mind?
I was calling in regards to Senator Sanders' speech, but it was already made. I thought it was going to be a concession speech, but it wasn't. Now, the questions that he imposed upon Mr. Biden, that's not something that Mr. Biden can take over, because no one person is perfect, irregardless of who you are. So the question that he's imposing to him, what is he going to do? The same thing happened with Hillary
Bernie is suggesting that he would try to address all those problems. You would have to do it with Congress, obviously, but Congress isn't going to start moving in a direction without leadership from the president. I mean, Joe Biden a couple of days ago said that if Medicare for All passed, he'd probably veto it, or he'd consider vetoing it. That's a very different response than if Medicare for All passes, which will save us, trillions of dollars, that you would sign it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a difference.
But the thing that the Democrats have to do is to get the two billionaires that were in the race to back them so they can get rid of McConnell and Donald Trump.
I think once we have a nominee, that's going to happen, Horace. I think this is going to shake out, and this is just the process. This is the normal process. We went through this with Bernie and Hillary. We're going through it right now with Bernie and Joe. We'll see where it goes. Martin in Bellingham, Washington. Hey, Martin, what's up?
Yeah, hi. I'd like to encourage you, Tom, and others to get Bernie to collaborate with Ralph Nader. I listen to him at least once a month, and he's got some great ideas, and I think he's waiting to hear from Bernie. What do you think?
In some Democratic circles, Ralph Nader is still a little toxic because of the 2000 election in Florida. But, he's a wise elder, and I just don't know if any kind of collaboration like that would be helpful or hurtful. I think the main thing that Bernie needs to be doing right now, in addition to distinguishing himself from Joe Biden, which is what he did this morning with his speech, is he also needs to be reaching out to the so-called moderates, in my humble opinion, and saying, I'm here to make peace with you, not to destroy you. To stop talking about going after the Democratic establishment and start talking about taking over the Democratic establishment and turning it in a progressive direction, but doing it in a collaborative and collegial way rather than a confrontational way. But that's just my personal opinion. And I think that to some extent what the speech he just gave, obviously he's going after Biden because Biden is his opponent, and that's what you expect of somebody in politics. But he's not doing personal attacks. He's not.
I respect that.
Yeah, and Bernie never has actually, and that's something throughout his life and throughout his political career. And for the 11 years he was on this show, he always I would say snarky things about Republicans, and he would say they're people too, that we disagree with them. We're going to do everything we can to defeat them. We oppose their policies, but let's not descend into snark. And that was a good lesson for me, actually, that I learned from Bernie. So I think we've all learned a lot from Bernie. I think the Democratic Party has learned a lot from Bernie. And whether Bernie is our nominee or not, Bernie has changed the trajectory of this country. And that's a good thing.
Thanks for checking in, Tom.
Yep. Thank you, Martin. Good to hear from you. And thanks for watching us on YouTube. We'll be back. It's 20 minutes past the hour. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. So just a few more things from the news. I promised as we got into the second hour here that that I'd update you on what's going on. And we kind of got derailed by Bernie's speech at the very beginning of the program, or of the hour rather. But the World Health Organization now has officially certified the coronavirus. 2 days ago, CNN started calling it a pandemic, saying that, it basically meets the definition. Well, today, this is from the BBC, and a tip of the hat to Nigel for flagging this for me. The World Health Organization chief, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, says the number of cases outside China has increased 13-fold over the past 2 weeks. He's deeply concerned by alarming levels of inaction over the virus. That I think he's talking to you, Donald Trump. And the World Health Organization has now officially declared that this is a pandemic, a global pandemic. And he said governments must strike a fine balance between protecting health, minimizing disruption, and respecting human life. We're in this together to do the right things with calm and protect the citizens of the world. It is doable. He said several countries have demonstrated that this virus can be suppressed and controlled. The challenge for many countries who are now dealing with large clusters or community transmission is not whether they can do the same, it's whether they will. And again, talking to you, Trump and Pence. Meanwhile, when Dr. Anthony Fauci was speaking this morning before the House Oversight Committee, and this was a hearing on the virus, and one of the Democrats said, are things going to get worse? And he said, yes, they are. They're going to get worse before they get better. Congressman Michael Cloud, a Republican of Texas, tried to get, this is from Raw Story, tried to get Dr. Fauci, who's, by the way, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, to say that the media was overhyping the problem. He says, I'd like to spend some time trying to clear the record as we try to find the proper balance between creating a positive, proactive response to real threats as opposed to instigating overreaction. Seasonal flu has a mortality of 0.1%. The state mortality overall of this is about 3%. And then he says, but isn't this less lethal than H1N1? And Fauci said the 2009 pandemic of H1N1 was even less lethal than the regular seasonal flu. It was a bust. I mean, we were all worried about it, and Obama declared a state of emergency, but it turned out it wasn't all that deadly. But back to my point earlier about Washington State. Washington State wants to have what's called a Medicaid waiver, so that Medicaid will pay for low-income people on Medicaid. Medicaid will pay for low-income people to be treated not just in hospitals, but in a variety of other settings as well. And I don't know if this includes the hotels that they are buying up in Washington State. They're buying these older hotels where you walk in through a single door from the outside, or not hotels, motels. Where it's got an air conditioner in the window. These are the buildings that were built in the 50s and 60s and early 70s. And because they're perfect for isolation. Somebody can go in and, food can be brought to the door, and that's, the whole thing. So to pay for these things, Washington State, if they're going to have Medicare and Medicaid services, pay for, and I'm not sure if they're specifically talking about these motels or what. They said that they're looking for, the state wants to avoid, above all else, adding crowds to hospitals that are already overflowing with sick patients. So that's what they're saying. But what they need is a waiver. It's called the 1135 waiver. And that waiver can only be triggered by the president declaring an emergency or a disaster under what's called the Stafford Act. And the Washington State is begging the White House to do this, and the White House is ignoring them. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve, somebody called yesterday and said, can you catch this from money? And I said, well, if somebody sneezed into their hand and then took a quarter out of their pocket and put it in your hand, yeah, probably, but I wouldn't worry so much about just normal money. Well, I stand corrected. This from CBS News. The headline, can you catch the coronavirus from handling cash? And I'll just share with you the first couple of sentences. The Federal Reserve is delaying processing dollars that have been repatriated from Asia. The Louvre Museum in Paris isn't accepting cash from visitors, and Iran has urged its citizens to stop using banknotes over fears the coronavirus can be transmitted to humans through contaminated objects like cash. They say that this is transmittable through what are called fomites, surfaces including paper money that have been handled by an infected person. Dr. Sanjay Migawar, chair of George Washington University School of Medicine's Department of Microbiology, said, quote, the belief is that these viruses can stay on surfaces in their fully active states for at least 10 days. That includes cash and all kinds of other surfaces that people normally touch. So certainly with the coronavirus, cash handling is a concern. Whoa. I mean, I thought that, even flu could not be transmitted with, via money. Meanwhile, Robert Reich is saying that, speaking of money, the Congress should immediately appropriate $400 billion to pay for coronavirus testing and treatment, paid sick leave and family leave this year, renewable for next year if necessary, extended Medicaid and unemployment insurance, and immediate one-time payments of $1,000 to every adult and $500 to every child to basically keep the economy afloat through a time of crisis. Robert Reich used to be the labor secretary in Bill Clinton's administration, one of the really good guys. We'll be back with your calls after this.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be right back. Stick around. Three days to go. It's Wednesday, and we have a new premium. And by the way, thanks to the folks who stepped up yesterday. We as I said, we have $40,000 we have to raise by the end of this week, and we raised $7,000 yesterday. That was great. A lot of people called in and made $120 gifts to get either my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, or one of the 2 new T-shirts, and that was super. Thank you, if you're one of those folks who called in. And if you're not one of the folks who called in and made a contribution yesterday, please do so today. We have a new premium. It's Trump toilet paper. Suitable for blowing your nose on as well. It's that time of year, right? With a $30 contribution, and they'll throw in a bumper sticker as well. So that's is with $30, right? Do I have that right? Yes, $30. So with a $20 contribution, of course, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or your car magnet. The car magnet is, kind of cool. It's one of these get out the vote things. I'm voting. Are you? With a $30 contribution, you have the world famous Trump toilet paper. With a $50 contribution, it's the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. With a $75 contribution, the Thom Hartmann mug, the Tag Your It mug. With a $120 contribution, get an autographed copy of my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, or a Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or the Just Effing Vote t-shirt. Those are all $120 gifts. With a $240 gift, we can hang out together on the internet, and just a relatively small group of us will schedule, enough of these that they're never, that they're never large. They're always small enough that people can get together and be heard and ask questions and all that kind of thing. That's with the $240 gift. With a $300 gift, you've got the special Free Speech TV Get Out the Vote pack. There's a set of Free Speech TV host postcards that you can send to your friends and family. There is the car magnet to get out the vote. I'm voting, are you? There is the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and you get the autographed copy of The Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $360 gift, you get the complete set, the Hidden History book set, The Hidden History of the Guns and the Second Amendment, my book about how the Second Amendment was passed to protect the slave patrols in the South, specifically in Georgia and Virginia and South Carolina, or the Carolinas, and how the gun industry basically conned or lobbied, let's say, the Supreme Court. I don't think Scalia was conned. I think he was a willing accomplice. But anyhow, that's the guns and the Second Amendment. Then also there's the Hidden History of the U.S. Supreme Court, the Betrayal of America, which talks about how the Supreme Court has betrayed us with regard to a whole variety of things. They've helped deconstruct unions. They've helped tear apart the middle class. The Supreme Court. They have empowered. They've empowered corruption throughout our political system by making it legal for billionaires and corporations to throw as much money at politicians as they want. All of these things, none of these things were done legislatively. In fact, in every case, they struck down legislation that protected union rights and protected worker rights and protected the middle class and protected, or kept money out of politics. And the Supreme Court knocked down all of these things. And the book is a damning indictment. And at the end, there is a way that Congress can actually get around the Supreme Court that was actually originally suggested during the Reagan administration by John Roberts, who's now the Chief Justice. So from the horse's mouth, as it were, I think it's one of the more important books I've written, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court. And of course, then finally, The Hidden History of the Republican War on Voting. And this goes through, how we got here, the Powell memo, how the Republicans basically reinvented themselves in the 70s and 80s after the Supreme Court decision, and how they fine-tuned voter suppression through the 80s and 90s, how it was used as a blunt instrument by George W. Bush and his brother Jeb in the 2000 election, how they, in the 2002, with the Help America Vote Act, how Republicans pushed through legislation that would kind of fine-tune the whole system so that they could easily and effectively suppress the vote. And then how they've been doing it ever since, and how it's showing up in this discrepancy between exit polls and actual polls. So with a $360 contribution, you get all three of those books, and they're all small, short, easily read books. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and come visit us, once all this stuff settles down out there. But the bottom line is we need to keep Free Speech TV going. We need to keep this show on the air. We are way behind in our fundraising, and we need your help. We really do need your help. So please call now if you haven't already, 877-378-8669. We just have 3 days to go. please call now. This program needs your help. This network needs your help. Please help us make it all happen and keep it going. 877-378-8669. Thank you. So it's Wednesday, and special new premium with a $30 gift. You get a roll. Coming up on the Science Revolution this week, first, Trump is using the same logic on COVID-19 that he used for pesticides and pollution. And I'll explain why that's not a good thing. Nile Marin, Forestry and Biodiversity Framework Coordinator with Friends of the Earth International, is here. Can we stop mass extinctions? Eva Hamer, Legal Coordinator of Direct Action Everywhere, drops by on her article, Why I Went Topless at Costco. Plus, geeky science. This is what happens when public transit is free. But wait, there's more. Tune in to the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are found. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida and Mark Meadows of North Carolina, two Republican trolls who were on the plane with the president, were exposed to the coronavirus at CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference last month. They were showing no symptoms at all, and the Centers for Disease Control says you can't get a test unless you are symptomatic. In fact, this is from today's Washington Post. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends that healthcare providers prioritize tests for hospitalized patients who are exhibiting symptoms, coronavirus symptoms, elderly and medically fragile individuals, along with others who have shown signs of illness after contact with a known or suspected coronavirus patient. But you've got to be sick before you can get the test, according to the CDC. And so, you know, the New York Times is saying, or the Washington Post rather, the two lawmakers said they were exhibiting no symptoms of respiratory illness, raising questions of why they were tested at all. Yeah. Well, I guess, you know, if you're a Republican congressman, no problem. You know, you can just get your test. It's all good. Paul in Chicago. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind?
Yeah, a stupid question for you, but my grandfather was born in 1912, and I remember him talking at one point about how he had actually been given a horse serum and how sick it made him. And I was wondering if there's been any talk, or if you know of anything, if they are considering doing this, because if they can't, you know, come up with a vaccine, if doing a serum or an anti-serum would be a way of at least giving people a fighting chance.
Was that to mitigate the effects of the flu of 1919? Is that what you're saying?
No, apparently he didn't have that. No. Fortunately, I think it was something like whooping cough or some other. Yeah. But I just have a very vague recollection of him talking about this.
Right.
And it must have been whooping cough or diphtheria or something.
There is one drug, Paul. There is one drug that is made by Gilead, and Gilead is one of the few companies whose stock has been going up, because this drug has been used a number of times on a, quote, compassionate basis. It was originally developed to treat Ebola, and in fact was used successfully to treat Ebola. So it's an antiviral. Ebola is a virus also, a different kind of virus, but it's a virus. And this drug that has VIR at the end of the name, and it's something like a Simavir or something like that. But if you Google or DuckDuckGo coronavirus drug and Gilead, Gilead, which is the name of the company, it'll pop right up. That's the one that everybody's looking at, saying, well, probably maybe this will do it. They have tried some of the anti-HIV drugs. I don't know the results of those studies. They've tried a lot of different things in China, and my guess is that by the end of this year or early next year, there will probably be several antiviral drugs on the market that are effective against these coronaviruses. But as of this moment, the entire response of the federal government, these things have to be approved by the Food and Drug Administration. The entire response of the federal government has been so lethargic because, all the people who would have been in charge of pandemic diseases in the executive branch were fired 2 years ago by John Bolton.
So, as one does, yes.
Yeah. So that's where we're at. So anyhow, thanks a lot for the call. It's great to hear from you. Katie in Houston, Texas. Hey, Katie, what's up?
Hey, I just want to say I'm a huge fan of yours. So
well, thank you.
I love what you do. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of let you know and your listeners know, as of an hour ago, Houston just canceled the largest event of the year, which is the Houston Rodeo.
Wow.
So it's a huge deal, and I'm watching the mayor right now on a press conference saying that there's an emergency basically shutdown for the city of Houston for the next 7 days, and all events within March are canceled or rescheduled.
Yeah, this is wise. I mean, this is the time for
well,
not.
If you go on social media, everyone's up in arms about it, and I can't really figure out why, because it's a precaution that makes sense for every single human being.
Well, if you go on social media, what you will find is that some of the most outspoken people on social media are the people who are regular watchers of Fox News or listeners to Right Wing Hate Radio. And over on Fox News, there's not a crisis. And on Right Wing Hate Radio, it's a conspiracy against Donald Trump to take down his presidency. So I'm guessing that the people who are complaining about this on social media, particularly Facebook, I mean, Facebook just feeds this stuff.
They just think it's a huge conspiracy.
Yeah, and Facebook is actually letting Trump run ads that have naked lies in them. Mark Zuckerberg, I think he's showing his true colors. I think it's very unfortunate, but so that's probably where the trolls are coming from. Yeah, thanks a lot, Katie.
Thank you so much.
Yep, good talking to you. But this is, what Houston is doing is something that is going to spread all across the country. Chicago right now is trying to decide whether or not to hold the St. Patrick's Day parade this weekend, where they dye the Chicago River green and all that kind of stuff. My guess is that they will suspend it. As of 4 or 5 hours ago, that was the last time I heard they were going to be meeting and discussing it today. Frankly, I personally, just speaking for myself, and I'm not a public health expert, but I read a hell of a lot of stuff here. It's part of my job. I would hope that they suspend it, but we'll see. We'll see. It's going to, it'd be a financial hit to the city, and that's always the flip side of these things. But I think that what Houston is doing as a city is not only what cities and states around the country need to be doing, but it's what we need to be doing personally, which is, you can go a few weeks or maybe even a few months if we have to without going out to a restaurant or without going out to the movie theater or without, just kind of, hanging out at home. Not being, fearful and hysterical, but being cautious. I think that this, just like if it was a really, really severe flu season, you probably wouldn't want to go out in public, either. This is just, So anyway, Joe in Salisbury, Massachusetts. Hey, Joe, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. First, thank you very, very much for you and everything you're doing. You're an amazing
thank you, Joe.
Person. I realized the extent of your stuff until recently. My question has to do with how extensive the backdrop mechanisms that would be necessary for Trump to initiate some kind of, declare emergency, declare martial law, and
those are two very different things, Joe. He's already declared a state of emergency on our southern border in order to militarize the border and steal money from the Pentagon. To declare martial law would be a whole different thing, and that's a good question for Congressman Pocan for Friday. I had asked him, can he suspend elections? And the answer appears to be no. But whether he could declare martial law, that would take a lot. I mean, but I don't know the answer to the question. I'll have to look into it. By the way, I just got a text message from one of our friends in Chicago at WCPT who said Chicago has officially canceled the St. Patrick's Day parade. So just FYI to everybody. Joe, thanks for the call. Tom in Fairfax, California. Hey, Tom, what's up?
Yes. Hi, Tom. If I may, I'd like to switch it back to a discussion about the results of last night's Super Tuesday 2 and all that. And I'm really wondering where in the world has Elizabeth Warren been in all this? She has slipped into the background, and I really think they have lost an opportunity to build a coalition between Bernie's camp and with Elizabeth Warren's camp by orchestrating the same sort of coalition that they did with Buttigieg and Klobuchar and everybody else when they did that right before the South Carolina primary.
Right.
I would really hope that Elizabeth Warren can see that if the most important thing to her is to see a woman president, a woman become president eventually, that the path of her pathway to do that is as vice president. And I think...
See, that's not for her to reach out, Tom. That's for Bernie to reach out. If Bernie were to reach out to Elizabeth Warren and say, I'll make you vice president, and he was given that opportunity by Rachel Maddow last week, by the way. She explicitly asked him that question, would you consider Elizabeth Warren for vice president? And he punted. So if he had said yes, I think history might be different.
I saw that, and I agree with you. I think it is his turn to endorse her. She could endorse him, and that would be no problem. But he can endorse her by saying that if he's elected, he would make her my vice president. He would ask her to. It's not... And that's not.
I don't know how the political calculus on that works, Tom. I'm not deep enough in the heads or frankly in my own personal experience of being a political consultant. The conventional wisdom always used to be you need to balance your ticket regionally. It's why JFK took Lyndon Johnson, even though he hated his guts, because he was from Texas. He was a Southerner from Texas, and JFK knew as a Northeastern liberal he needed a Southerner from Texas to carry Texas. And carrying Texas was actually what gave him the election. People say it was Illinois. It wasn't. It was actually Texas. But whether that math still holds, because both of them are from the Northeast, I don't know. I'm guessing it probably doesn't, at least anywhere near as much as it used to. But, Bernie might be thinking about Stacey Abrams for VP, or he might be thinking about Kamala Harris for VP, or he might be thinking about somebody we don't even know about. This is his choice to make and his decision to make, and we'll just have to see how it plays out. And beyond that, I think everything else is speculation. Tom, thank you for the call. Michael in Hammond, Indiana. Hey, Michael, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Good. What's on your mind?
I wanted to know because you explain things so well, if you don't test everybody, can you get a true R0 number?
No.
The rate at which the disease is passed from one person to another.
Right. You're absolutely right, Michael, and it's a really important point. The R0 number is, as you say, the rate at which how many people one sick person infects. And with that R0 number combined with the velocity, how quickly the infection comes on, you can calculate how rapidly the epidemic is going to spread and how rapidly you're going to be overwhelmed in your hospitals and things like that. And the number that we would have in the United States would be absurd, just like the fatality number that we have in the United States is absurd. It's around 6%. Why? Because we're not testing everybody. We're not even testing people who are sick but aren't so sick they need to be hospitalized. And so as a result of that, there's a lot of people walking around sick who are probably passing this virus around, and that's why we're getting this community spread. China apparently started doing that aggressively, at least in Wuhan and in Hubei province. And Japan and South Korea have been doing this. South Korea, in particular, has been testing people like there's no tomorrow. And their R0 number looks to be around 2. And 2 is not a good number. You want it to be below 1. If it's below 1, eventually it burns itself out and goes away. If it's above 1, then that means that it's going to spread and get larger and larger. And the number coming out of South Korea and Japan and China looks like it's around 2. But, here in the United States, and there's no reason to think that it would affect Americans any differently than it would affect Chinese or Japanese. So here in America, our numbers are all screwed up because of the incompetence of the Trump administration. Did I answer your question, Michael?
Oh, you're in education.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Michael. It's great to hear from you, and I appreciate the call. Thank you for listening to WCPT there in Indiana, in Hammond, Indiana. It's 47 minutes, coming up on 48 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. We're kind of processing what's going on. The stock market is down about 4%. Again, Trump is thinking about bailing out the oil industry and the hotel industry. The people who support his election and where he makes his money. What a surprise. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the place where despair is not an option, nor is fear. Let's just be reasonable and cautious. And welcome back. John in Bellingham, Washington. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Are you speaking to me?
I am. You're on the air.
Oh, okay. I didn't know I gave her my city. Anyway, and this is going to sound a little crazy until you give it a little thought, and it's probably not realistic, but why wouldn't Biden try to court Romney as his running mate? There would be no chance of Romney getting elected after Biden's first term by the Democrats.
I'm not so sure
Certainly
of
not
that.
by the Republicans.
I'm not so sure of that. Keep in mind, Romney was governor of Massachusetts, which is a fairly liberal state, and he put Romneycare into place, which we know as Obamacare.
Obamacare, exactly, and that was my point. Is there isn't a lot of difference. Granted, I wouldn't want Romney picking Supreme Court justices, but there isn't a lot of difference between foreign policy, tax policy.
Joe Biden has been running as a progressive Republican or a conservative Democrat. I mean, they're kind of the same thing. And I get your point, John. I just think that it would be a horrible mistake. I think it would kill his support with the Democratic base, and it would probably guarantee that Donald Trump gets elected.
I don't think so. I don't think there's a chance that I think the Democrats are going to turn out anybody but Trump.
Yeah,
it's going to be anybody but Trump.
Yeah.
And the other point is, what better way to split the Republicans than right down the money?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting idea. John, I got to move along, but it's an interesting idea. Who knows? Bob in Oklahoma City. Hey, Bob, what's up?
Hi, Tom.
Hey.
I got a question.
Your phone is breaking up, Bob.
It is.
Yeah, Bob, I'm going to have to put you on hold here, and Joyce will talk to you about what's going on. Carlos in Vista, California. Hey, Carlos, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Good. What's up?
Listen, I had a quick question for you. Given the fact that Bernie is facing such an unsurmountable situation here,
Well, it's not
it looks like
insurmountable yet. It's just going to be steep.
It is steep right now, so I guess there's a light of hope in your opinion regarding this. But my question to you is, what is the value of him going into a public debate with Biden? It seems like people have already made up their mind. I feel that at this point it's not going to make much of a difference. What's your take on that? Do you really feel that these public debates, particularly the one that's coming up, is going to make a difference to tilt the situation in favor of Bernie?
I think it may well. Or it might work against Bernie. I mean, it's all going to depend on how he does in the debate and how Biden does in the debate. I think
it was so disappointing to see Elizabeth Warren just not step up to the plate. I don't understand that.
It's not her duty. I mean, it's that's that. I think she's keeping her options open. But right now, in terms of what Bernie should do, and whether the debate is going to help him or hurt him, and whether it's going to help or hurt Biden, it's all going to depend on the performance in the debate. And I think that I think it's a public service. Americans need to be educated, and we need to see a debate on the issues. And Bernie's going to make that happen. I mean, the 7 or 8 previous Democratic debates were mostly not on the issues. They were mostly on, hey, please attack this guy, and that, I mean, it was just these media-driven freak shows. And I don't think Bernie will tolerate that, and that will be a good thing. So, we'll actually have a conversation about the issues that Bernie raised in his speech today. I look forward to it. I think it'll be a good thing for the party. We'll be right back. Hey, did you know that Hillary Clinton actually won Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida in the 2016 election? It's on page 92 of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Kurt in Houston, Texas. Hey, Kurt, thanks for listening to us on Sirius XM. What's up?
Hey, I actually own an entertainment facility here in Houston, and with the announcement of them canceling the rodeo,
we're looking at probably one of our bleakest spring breaks.
Yeah.
Which traditionally carries us through, from December to the summertime.
Yeah, and you're not alone in that. And there's restaurants all over the country that are hurting. There are theaters all over the country that are hurting. And I know that when I go on the air and say, hey, stay home for a little while, that hurts people in your business. And this is why why Nancy Pelosi yesterday and Chuck Schumer the day before were talking about Congress passing legislation that will support small businesses through this time, because this is a time of crisis, and you didn't create this problem, Kurt. And meanwhile, you've got the fracking industry in Donald Trump's ear asking for a bailout, and him yesterday in his press conference, or his whatever you call that thing, his cabinet meeting with the press involved, saying, well, yeah, we're looking at bailing out the fracking industry and maybe the hotel industry, but there should be something more comprehensive, and it should cover small businesses right across the board. I know our business, this little radio show here, is going to take a hit because we always do in recessions. What happens is advertisers pull back, and we're funded largely by advertisers. It's probably 80-90% of our total revenue, and comes on the commercial side of the show on from advertising. And when that pulls back, I end up dialing back, going without a paycheck for a little while. I think we're all in kind of hunker down mode. Kurt, I'm sure I'm not reassuring you, but
no, it is a fear. I mean, I don't want to have to take anyone off payroll. Yeah. Because we can't support our traditional numbers, and normally this is our hiring up for the summer season. So
I agree.
It's a predictor for how we're going to go.
Yeah, and and as small business owners, I mean, we can always cut our own pay first, at least those of us who can afford to do so. Before cutting anybody else's pay or cutting people out. And, something that I've done over the years with this show when the economy has gone bad, but it's not something that any of us like to do. And I'm not looking for a bailout for the radio industry, but I do think that the hospitality industry in general, and I realize Donald Trump runs hotels, but, and restaurants, but these are the businesses that are going to get really badly hit in places like yours. And there should be a backstop. Kurt, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. It's good to hear from you. Daryl in Denville, New Jersey. Hey, Daryl, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Good. So far, so good.
Yeah, just a couple of things real quick. I live in Denville. That's New Jersey 11. Mm-hmm. And before Mikey Sherrill took this seat, Freelandheisen was the representative, and it had been in Republican hands for 28 years. So there are a lot of Republicans in this area.
Uh-huh.
A lot of Fox News watchers, right?
Okay.
So I'm post double lung transplant, which means I'm immunosuppressed.
Oh my.
So I just went to the grocery store, ShopRite, and it's middle of the day, a lot of people. I'm the only one wearing a mask, and people are looking at me and snickering like, first of all, they don't know my story.
Right.
And second of all, we're just a hop, skip, and a jump from New York. And there are a lot of people in this area that work in New York and come back and forth over the bridge or through the tunnel every day. And these people around here are in utter denial. And so I absolutely blame Donald Trump for his response to this. But ultimately, people are going to have to get out of this denial phase and realize we are in a global pandemic, and anybody can get sick, and anybody could already be sick. And
That's correct.
We have to protect ourselves.
That's absolutely right, Daryl, and I wish you the very best. Stay well, stay safe. You've got a real challenge there. I wish you the best. But yeah, Fox News is going to have to wake up, is the bottom line. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
So it's Wednesday, and special new premium with a $30 gift. You get a roll of Trump toilet paper. It doesn't get better than that, because this is the guy who brought us the coronavirus epidemic here in the United States. People are dying because of this man in the White House. 2 years ago, they shut down the offices in the Department of Homeland Security and the National Security Council that were in charge of dealing with pandemic diseases. Why did he shut them down? Well, because Barack Obama put them into place during the Ebola epidemic, or maybe it was during the swine flu epidemic in 2009. I mean, this is terrible. So please, call now, vote by telephone, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV, and get your free speech or your Donald Trump toilet paper. Three days to go. It's Wednesday, and we have a new premium. And by the way, thanks to the folks who stepped up yesterday. We as I said, we have $40,000 we have to raise by the end of this week, and we raised $7,000 yesterday. That was great. A lot of people called in and made $120 gifts to get either my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, or one of the 2 new T-shirts, and that was super. Thank you, if you're one of those folks who called in. And if you're not one of the folks who called in and made a contribution yesterday, please do so today. We have a new premium. It's Trump toilet paper. It's suitable for blowing your nose on as well. It's that time of year, right? With a $30 contribution, and they'll throw in a bumper sticker as well. So that's is with $30, right? Do I have that right? Yes, $30. So. With a $20 contribution, of course, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or your car magnet. The car magnet is, kind of cool. It's one of these get out the vote things. I'm voting. Are you? With a $30 contribution, you have the world famous Trump toilet paper. With a $50 contribution, it's the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. With a $75 contribution, the Thom Hartmann mug, the Tag You're It mug. With a $120 contribution, get an autographed copy of my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, or a Ask Me About Free Speech TV T-shirt, or the Just Effing Vote T-shirt. Those are all $120 gifts. With a $240 gift, we can hang out together on the internet, and just a relatively small group of us will schedule, enough of these that they're never, that they're never large. They're always small enough that people can get together and be heard and ask questions and all that kind of thing. That's with the $240 gift. With a $300 gift, you've got the special Free Speech TV Get Out the Vote pack. There's a set of Free Speech TV host postcards that you can send to your friends and family. There is the car magnet to get out the vote. I'm voting, are you? There is the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and you get the autographed copy of The Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $360 gift, you get the complete set, the Hidden History book set, The Hidden History of the Guns and the Second Amendment, my book about how the Second Amendment was passed to protect the slave patrols in the South, specifically in Georgia and Virginia and South Carolina, or the Carolinas, and how the gun industry basically conned or lobbied, let's say, the Supreme Court. I don't think Scalia was conned. I think he was a willing accomplice. But anyhow, that's the guns and the Second Amendment. Then also there's the Hidden History of the U.S. Supreme Court, the Betrayal of America, which talks about how the Supreme Court has betrayed us with regard to a whole variety of things. They've helped deconstruct unions. They've helped tear apart the middle class. The Supreme Court. They have empowered. They've empowered corruption throughout our political system by making it legal for billionaires and corporations to throw as much money at politicians as they want. All of these things, none of these things were done legislatively. In fact, in every case, they struck down legislation that protected union rights and protected worker rights and protected the middle class and protected, or kept money out of politics. And the Supreme Court knocked down all of these things. And the book is a damning indictment. And at the end, there is a way that Congress can actually get around the Supreme Court that was actually originally suggested during the Reagan administration by John Roberts, who's now the Chief Justice. So from the horse's mouth, as it were, I think it's one of the more important books I've written, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court. And of course, then finally, The Hidden History of the Republican War on Voting. And this goes through, how we got here, the Powell Memo, how the Republicans basically reinvented themselves in the 70s and 80s after the Supreme Court decision, and how they fine-tuned voter suppression through the 80s and 90s, how it was used as a blunt instrument by George W. Bush and his brother Jeb in the 2000 election, how they, in the 2002, with the Help America Vote Act, how Republicans pushed through legislation that would kind of fine-tune the whole system so that they could easily and effectively suppress the vote. And then how they've been doing it ever since, and how it's showing up in this discrepancy between exit polls and actual polls. So with a $360 contribution, you get all three of those books, and they're all small, short, easily read books. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and come visit us, once all this stuff settles down out there. But the bottom line is we need to keep Free Speech TV going. We need to keep this show on the air. We are way behind in our fundraising, and we need your help. We really do need your help. So please call now if you haven't already, 877-378-8669. We just have 3 days to go. Please call now. This program needs your help. This network needs your help. Please help us make it all happen and keep it going. 877-378-8669. Thank you. So it's Wednesday, and special new premium with a $30 gift. You get a roll.
Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and on the line with us, very happy to have Roger Hallam. He is the British environmental activist, organic farmer, and most significantly, the co-founder of the Extinction Rebellion. He's also the author of a new book, Common Sense for the 21st Century. Only nonviolent rebellion can now stop climate breakdown and social collapse. Roger, welcome to the program.
Yeah, hi, thanks.
We here in the United States, we occasionally hear a story about Extinction Rebellion, but the vast majority of them are limited to progressive websites. Tell us about the organization, how it came about, and what y'all do.
Yeah, well, it came about because a whole bunch of people decided that reality has hit and the human race is heading towards extinction in so much as we understand the science. And if we're heading for extinction, and this is a policy of world governments, then it seems to be justified to rebel against them. So, hence, Extinction Rebellion. Started off about 18 months ago with 15 people in a room in Bristol in the UK, and now it's in about 70 countries around the world, and over 200,000 people are mobilised in the UK, and it's involved in mass civil disobedience.
I don't... Go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't have a website here on my notes for Extinction Rebellion. Is it extinctionrebellion.org?
Yeah, if you put that into Google, you'll get the various websites, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, so it would depend on what country you're in or that sort of thing, because they're...
That's right, yeah, there's different organizations.
Oh, yeah, it's xramerica.org here for the American version. I see. Okay, cool. So what sorts of rebellion should we be engaging in, or do you engage in?
Well, in my book, Common Sense for the 21st Century, I'm basically giving my own views. So I'm not speaking on behalf of Extinction Rebellion in this interview or anything. Mm-hmm. Basically, I was planning to come to the United States to promote an argument, and that argument is that the political system is fundamentally incapable of responding to the climate emergency, given the time frame and given the urgency and the extremity of what is objectively required in order to stop putting carbon into the atmosphere. and the mechanism through which to change political regimes is through mass civil disobedience, and that seems, again, on the basis of the science, or the social science in that case, as the most effective way to bring about rapid political change in the shortest time possible when a government's engaged in genocidal activity.
This is, kind of an abstract conversation. Can you give me a specific example of these kinds of actions that you or others have engaged in that have produced a positive result? Or at least started a conversation?
Yeah. I mean, I think, first of all, it's important to understand the extremity of what we're facing. I mean, a lot of journalists ask me about the tactics and, what we do and what we don't do. And it's very easy to forget that we're actually facing something that human beings have never faced in their history, which is a complete breakdown of the geophysical system, the climate system. And that's inevitably going to lead to mass starvation, and mass starvation is going to lead to all the things that we read about in the history books: war, slaughter, rape, and social breakdown. And that's not some conspiracy theory. It's not some, radical political thing. I'm a business person. I've been running organic business for 30 years. It's people across the political spectrum have been reading the science, and we've been looking at the science, as you well know, for 30 years now, and the predictions are coming true. And so people are in this new emotional situation of realizing that 2 + 2 does actually equal 4, and this hell is coming down the road. Now, only once you've sort of emotionally engaged with that in terms of the grief and the depression and the despair, can you start to understand what is required. And obviously, what is required is mass disruption to the system that's taking ourselves and most certainly our children to their deaths. And what that involves is mass civil disobedience, which, classically speaking, means people going to the large cities or the capital cities and staying there until a government fundamentally changes its policies. And that's the primary objective of Extinction Rebellion.
Okay. And Common Sense for the 21st Century, your book is available pretty much everywhere, I'm assuming. George Monbiot wrote a great piece on the front cover. Brilliant, wise, profound, and persuasive. Well done, Roger. And
yeah, I don't think, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think I'm saying anything that is intellectually problematic.
I agree.
It's not difficult to understand the rationale. What's difficult is to engage emotionally with that reality, and this is the whole point behind civil disobedience. That as we know, human beings don't respond well to threats in the future. They'll sit there until it happens, and then, of course, in this case, it'll be too late. So the fundamental argument here is that you have to create that shock to the system before you get the geophysical shock. And that shock, the best way of doing that is to close down an economy or close down a city so that everyone starts to wake up to what's happening. Now, initially, of course, they're all going to hate you because who wants to have, their trip to work slowed down? But as happens, if the cause is just, as you might say, if it's like a no-brainer of what you're saying, then people do come round to the view that this is actually happening because they're actually getting disrupted. And then you get large-scale attitude change. And in the UK, there was 3,000 people arrested last year, which was the biggest civil disobedience event in British history, even bigger than the suffragettes. And that created a massive change in public perceptions of exactly how serious this is. Like 55% of the population in Britain now is very seriously concerned about climate change. Now, that's doubled, or tripled over the last year or two. And that's primarily because it's been made real, because people can see thousands of ordinary people getting dragged off the streets by the police, because they've decided they've had enough.
Yeah, we saw this here in the United States in the 1960s with the Civil Rights Movement, and we saw it here in the United States, not in my lifetime, but in the 19-aughts and the 19-teens with the suffrage movement. And in both cases, they led to radical and substantial changes. In the case of the suffragist movement, in 1920, women got the vote in the United States. And in the case of the civil rights, particularly in the late 50s, early 60s, Rosa Parks, the Montgomery bus boycott. There's just a whole bunch of, that was probably the most famous, led to the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Acts in 1965 and 66, as I recall, or maybe 64 and 65, but whatever. This works.
Yeah, it works. It's a bit of a no-brainer. There's overwhelming historical evidence to it. Obviously not straight away, and not obviously in every case, right? You're dealing with human societies and what have you. But compared with the alternatives, which is engaging in violence or engaging in, conventional political activity, sending emails and all that sort of stuff that's been going on for 30 years, this is by far the most effective way of doing it. But I think it's really important to understand that this isn't like previous social movements, in the sense that what we're dealing with now is like a cliff edge. Even though like racism and women's rights and all these things were terrible social issues in time, there were fundamentally linear problems. They weren't getting worse by the year.
And we're dealing now with literally the extinction of the human race. Roger, I'm sorry, we're out of time, but Roger Hallam, his book is Common Sense for the 21st Century. Hang on just a second.
Is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And he's the co-founder of the Extinction Rebellion. You can look it up on your favorite search engine. Roger, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks very much.
We'll be right back. And welcome back. Let's see here. Free Speech TV callers. John in Los Angeles. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Thom Hartmann, how you doing?
I'm alive and kicking here. What's on your mind, John?
Well, you should kicking good. I kind of disagree with you about the Democratic Party, for whom I just found out because you cannot get a FOIA request on that organization. It is corporate. That's why it's private corporate, privately owned company.
Well, the Democratic Party is a non-profit corporation. All political parties are. Or do you mean that the Democratic Party is supported by corporations? And in fact, that's largely true. There are a lot of corporations that contribute money to the Democratic Party, to the best of my knowledge.
Yes, but like you know how you get FOIA requests on certain aspects of the government and whatnot. Well, they're privately owned, so they are not. You can't get a FOIA request to them, and that's one thing. But that needs me to also understand that they unfortunately are not going to change their mind about how they're going to do things. And now
I'm not sure that's true, John. The Democratic Party has been at the forefront of social change. Leaders of social change in the 1930s with FDR, in the 1960s with John Kennedy and LBJ, and they actually did change this country. It's the stuff that I was just talking with Roger Hallam about. And
I would agree.
I think that I think the Democratic Party can do it again. Now, President Obama in 2008, when he ran for president, he changed the rules for the Democratic Party so that the party itself would not take lobbyist money. Now, I don't know if they were not taking corporate money. I'm guessing there's a piece of that. But then in 2016 in 2016, they changed the rules back so that the party could take that money. So, John, thank you for the call. It's good to hear from you. Lee in Tallahassee. Hey, Lee, what's up?
Tom, I was just watching a program on YouTube. It started about an hour ago. It's no longer live, but it's still on YouTube. It's about the World Health Organization giving the most up-to-date coronavirus update. It is telling people to do things that we haven't even heard about.
For example?
They're talking about how every country should be calling in and giving exactly what their plans are and how they're instigating this and what they're doing, and everybody's supposed to share.
Yeah, Italy is doing it right.
We aren't doing any of these things.
No, we're not. It's because we've got an incompetent nincompoop in the White House.
But I think your people would want to go and read and listen to that. It's just amazing.
Yeah. And the World Health Organization also just today declared, in fact, just in the last few hours, declared that this is a global pandemic, and they called out governments, not by name, but I think they were pretty clearly pointing at the United States, saying that there is severe inaction happening. And then there are other countries, and I would guess that they were referring largely to Italy, and now Germany is getting ready to do what Italy is doing, or something close to it. Angela Merkel just came out and said that 70% of all Germans could be infected with this by the end of the year. I mean, this is serious, serious stuff, and it needs to be taken seriously. And instead, we've got this idiot in the White House who's talking about bailing out the fossil fuel industry and cutting taxes on hotels. We'll be right back. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. Welcome back. I was just talking with somebody who was talking about the World Health Organization, was saying that, countries need to be taking this very seriously, and what Italy is doing is like the right thing. And, if you've got to shut down your economy for a little while to get control of a global pandemic, to give us enough time so that we're not overwhelming our hospitals, and that we can be testing some of these antiviral drugs so that, large numbers of people won't die, but it's going to take, months in all probability for the antiviral drugs, and it's going to take well over a year to develop a vaccine. So what we need to do is slow the spread of this. And so what does Donald Trump have to say about that? Well, he just tweeted, "We need the wall more than ever." Right. Seriously? He says the Democrat policy of open borders is a direct threat to the health and well-being of all Americans. Now you see it with the coronavirus. Right. First of all, people find ways around walls. Secondly, we've got a crisis in Central America, a humanitarian crisis that was largely caused by American policies. And these are not people, looking for a job. These are people fleeing, murder and threats of violence, and their children being recruited into gangs and things that are there because, again, of American foreign policy, largely during the Reagan administration. The whole Iran-Contra thing, the Contra part of Iran-Contra was the Nicaraguan Contras. The people who were opposed to the right-wing government at that time. And, Reagan wanted them destroyed. And so Ollie North was smuggling, weapons down there to take out the Contras. Or maybe I've got it backwards. Maybe the Contras, there was the Contras were the right-wing forces who were fighting against the left-wing government of Daniel Ortega. Now I remember. It's been a while since I've even thought about that. But in any case, Reagan was smuggling weapons down to them in defiance of a law that Congress passed that made it illegal for the federal government to arm the Contras. And Reagan did it anyway. And, that is still echoing. That violence is still echoing through that region. It's just amazing. So, Mary in Evanston, Illinois. Hey, Mary, what's on your mind today?
I thought you might want to know. Our governor came on television last night.
That's J.B. Pritzker?
And said that he cannot get the necessary test kits for the coronavirus.
Right.
Nobody has to worry about the rest of it because you can't even get the damn test.
That's correct. And the only time that you can get a test is when you're really, really sick and on the edge of being hospitalized, and really you needed to have the test when you first felt a few symptoms so that you wouldn't be spreading the disease around to everybody. And this test should be as widely available as a flu test is, or other common tests that you can buy over the counter and you can buy on Amazon, and probably would be if Donald Trump had not rejected the World Health Organization. And this is truly mind-boggling. I lost my
You want to hear
paper.
another story?
Yeah, go for it.
I called the president's office today, and I told the woman the same thing I told you, and she said, well, your governor needs to connect the CDC. And I told her she was out of her mind, and my governor knows exactly who to contact, and he still can't get them.
Yeah. Well, and here's why. Tim Dickinson is writing in Rolling Stone.
He didn't make enough.
Yeah, well, it's not that, and let me get into it, Mary. Here, this is from again from Rolling Stone magazine. Keep in mind, back in January, the World Health Organization, a German company, or maybe the German government, I'm not sure, the German tests were to test for the coronavirus were approved by the World Health Organization, and this company in Germany is cranking them out like crazy. And in fact, they're making them in several different countries now under license with this German thing. And this is the official WHO approved test. And as Tim Dickinson writes, yet as the CDC has scrambled to fix its test, another functioning test has been available. WHO, the World Health Organization, has successfully provided a competing German-developed test to countries all around the world, allowing them to better trace the spread of the virus, not only confirming cases and obviously sick patients, but tracking down contacts who may have a mild form of the illness but can still spread it to others. In a letter last week to Vice President Mike Pence, Senator Patty Murray, who serves Washington State, the state hardest hit by the outbreak, I'm reading Tim Dickinson's piece in Rolling Stone here, demanded answers. Quote, we need to understand what is going wrong with testing, and the lack of transparency from the administration so far is unacceptable. And Patty Murray then, Senator Patty Murray, then said, quote, please provide an explanation for why the COVID-19 diagnostic test approved by the World Health Organization was not used here in the United States. On Friday, Rolling Stone asked the CDC the same question. Presumably Tim Dickinson, he's the reporter there, reached out to them. We also wanted information on potential conflicts of interest, including whether the CDC's test was developed in-house or was the work of an independent and for-profit contractor. In fact, we asked for a list of all contractors who had a financial interest in providing the CDC, the agency, with the reagents and the other components of the test. Despite multiple follow-ups, the CDC has not responded. Reached today, a CDC media staffer said the agency was overwhelmed with press requests and was working through its backlog. Our questions, she said, were in the queue. So Tim Dickinson writes, under the Trump administration, it seems the truth is also being rationed. Well, what's certainly being rationed are test kits. And, I think these are really legitimate questions. The CDC test kit, which was developed in January, but then didn't work. And again, the New York Times podcast from yesterday, The Daily, has this amazing story about this researcher in Seattle who was funded in part by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who was doing a flu research study, and they had to see how the flu spreads in communities in the Seattle area. And they had thousands of nose swabs or throat swabs from people all around Seattle. And when the coronavirus broke out, they thought, hey, we should test these things for coronavirus. But they couldn't by law because the test was not available that had been approved. So they developed their own test and tested these samples that they had collected of flu, and they discovered a bunch of people with coronavirus. But it was illegal for them to tell anybody. They finally broke the law and told the public health officials in Seattle, who went to a public high school and grabbed a high school student who was one of the people who tested positive and shut down the school. But this is still illegal under the Trump administration. This is how insane this thing is. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
So you've got a little research lab in Seattle that was able to develop a test that works. You've got the German test, the WHO test, all over the world. And Trump is like, no, we're going to ration them. Three days to go. It's Wednesday, and we have a new premium. And by the way, thanks to the folks who stepped up yesterday. We as I said, we have $40,000 we have to raise by the end of this week, and we raised $7,000 yesterday. That was great. A lot of people called in and made $120 gifts. to get either my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, or one of the 2 new T-shirts. And that was super. Thank you, if you're one of those folks who called in. And if you're not one of the folks who called in and made a contribution yesterday, please do so today. We have a new premium. It's Trump toilet paper. Suitable for blowing your nose on as well. It's that time of year, right? With a $30 contribution, and they'll throw in a bumper sticker as well. So that's is with $30, right? Do I have that right? Yes, $30. So with a $20 contribution, of course, there's the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or your car magnet. The car magnet is, kind of cool. It's one of these get out the vote things. I'm voting. Are you? With a $30 contribution, you have the world famous Trump toilet paper. With a $50 contribution, it's the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. With the $75 contribution, the Thom Hartmann mug, the Tag You're It mug. With the $120 contribution, get an autographed copy of my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, or a Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or the Just Effing Vote t-shirt. Well, those are all $120 gifts. With a $240 gift, we can hang out together on the internet, and just a relatively small group of us will schedule, enough of these that they're never, that they're never large. They're always small enough that people can get together and be heard and ask questions and all that kind of thing. That's with the $240 gift. With a $300 gift, you've got the special Free Speech TV Get Out the Vote pack. There's a set of Free Speech TV host postcards that you can send to your friends and family. There is the car magnet to get out the vote. I'm voting, are you? There is the Just Effing Vote tote bag, and you get the autographed copy of The Hidden History of the War on Voting. With a $360 gift, you get the complete set, the Hidden History book set, The Hidden History of the Guns and the Second Amendment, my book about how the Second Amendment was passed to protect the slave patrols in the South, specifically in Georgia and Virginia and South Carolina, or the Carolinas, and how the gun industry basically conned or lobbied, let's say, the Supreme Court. I don't think Scalia was conned. I think he was a willing accomplice. But anyhow, that's the guns and the Second Amendment. Then also there's the Hidden History of the U.S. Supreme Court, the Betrayal of America, which talks about how the Supreme Court has betrayed us with regard to a whole variety of things. They've helped deconstruct unions. They've helped tear apart the middle class. The Supreme Court. They have empowered. They've empowered corruption throughout our political system by making it legal for billionaires and corporations to throw as much money at politicians as they want. All of these things, none of these things were done legislatively. In fact, in every case, they struck down legislation that protected union rights and protected worker rights and protected the middle class and protected, or kept money out of politics. And the Supreme Court knocked down all of these things. And the book is a damning indictment. And at the end, there is a way that Congress can actually get around the Supreme Court that was actually originally suggested during the Reagan administration by John Roberts, who's now the Chief Justice. So from the horse's mouth, as it were, I think it's one of the more important books I've written, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court. And of course, then finally, The Hidden History of the Republican War on Voting. And this goes through, how we got here, the Powell memo, how the Republicans basically reinvented themselves in the 70s and 80s after the Supreme Court decision, and how they fine-tuned voter suppression through the 80s and 90s, how it was used as a blunt instrument by George W. Bush and his brother Jeb in the 2000 election, how they, in the 2002, with the Help America Vote Act, how Republicans pushed through legislation that would kind of fine-tune the whole system so that they could easily and effectively suppress the vote. And then how they've been doing it ever since, and how it's showing up in this discrepancy between exit polls and actual polls. So with a $360 contribution, you get all three of those books, and they're all small, short, easily read books. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and come visit us. once all this stuff settles down out there. But the bottom line is we need to keep Free Speech TV going. We need to keep this show on the air. We are way behind in our fundraising, and we need your help. We really do need your help. So please call now if you haven't already, 877-378-8669. We just have 3 days to go. Please call now. This program needs your help. This network needs your help. Please help us make it all happen and keep it going. 877-378-8669. Thank you. So it's Wednesday, and special new premium with a $30 gift. You get a roll. Coming up on the Science Revolution this week, first, Trump is using the same logic on COVID-19 that he used for pesticides and pollution. And I'll explain why that's not a good thing. Nile Marian, Forestry and Biodiversity Framework Coordinator with Friends of the Earth International, is here. Can we stop mass extinctions? Eva Hamer, Legal Coordinator of Direct Action Everywhere, drops by on her article, Why I Went Topless at Costco. Plus, geeky science. This is what happens when public transit is free. But wait, there's more. Tune in to the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are found. Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. Just a couple of quick news points. The White House has classified all conversations about the coronavirus pandemic, which is I'll give you more details on it in just a minute. I want to talk to Kevin Kamps here in just a second. And also, you had Anthony Fauci and a few other scientists testifying before Congress this morning. Apparently, they were saying things that Trump didn't like because they literally, somebody walked into the meeting room and said, these guys have to leave. The White House needs them right now. They cut the meeting short. It's nuts. Anyhow, on the line with us right now is Kevin Kamps. He's the radioactive waste specialist at beyondnuclear.org. You can also tweet him at beyondnuclear. Kevin, welcome back.
Hey, Tom. Good to be here. Thanks.
It's great to check in with you. It's been a while since we've talked. We need to do it more frequently. You were visiting the Fukushima Daiichi area, and you saw the nuclear power plants before the meltdown. And I understand there now is a connection to Fukushima and the Olympics coming up. Tell us about these two things.
Sure. I was in Japan in August of 2010, and I was in Fukushima on August 6th, which is Hiroshima Day. I was on a national speaking tour. This was 7 months before the catastrophe began. So all of the people I met there, and I was there on an anti-nuclear, speaking tour, so a lot of these folks were skeptical of the nuclear plant that they live next door to. And all of them, probably 100 people all told, including the mayor of one host town, the vice mayor of another, are now and have been for 9 years to this day nuclear evacuees with no prospect of returning home. There are still 40,000 nuclear evacuees, and many more who should not have returned home, but they have been forced to by the Japanese government. And it's a part of this propaganda campaign by the Abe administration to say everything's normal, everything's fine, nothing to see here, right down to the Olympic torch relay is going to begin at J City, a soccer complex very near Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. And Greenpeace just yesterday put out a report that said, hold on a second here, we're finding hotspots all over the place here.
Wow.
So it's really nuts.
So this is the anniversary, the 9th anniversary of the Fukushima disaster. If you could quickly recap exactly what happened and then bring us up to date on whether this disaster area, these crippled reactors, are still dumping radioactive waste into our environment.
Yeah, a 9.0 earthquake, a 45-foot-tall tsunami that caused the meltdown of 3 atomic reactors at Fukushima Daiichi and large-scale releases of hazardous radioactivity into the environment. And yes, it does continue. There is a slow hemorrhage of radioactivity into the ocean on every single day. But more significantly, perhaps, is 1.2 million tons of highly radioactive wastewater that the Japanese government and Tokyo Electric want to dump into the ocean intentionally because they're tired of storing it. So this is all going on as 40,000 plus Olympians and perhaps millions of spectators from all over the world are about to descend on Metro Tokyo and even Fukushima itself. Fukushima City would host the baseball and softball events despite these hotspots that are all over the place.
Wasn't Fukushima City evacuated?
No, it never was, but that's the thing, is even cities that were evacuated closer to Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, the Japanese government, by cutting off any stipends that people were depending on, have been forced to return to their old homes despite the radioactive contamination. And a point of the Greenpeace report is they've had major typhoons like late last year that caused recontamination of decontaminated household areas. It comes down off the forested mountains, which is 70% of the Fukushima landscape, and recontaminates people's homes.
Wow. Has there been any analysis of the public health consequences of this? I mean, are they seeing, like, after the war in Iraq, or the initial stages of the war in Iraq, we started seeing basically an epidemic of birth defects among Iraqi children. And in some cases, it was alleged American soldiers' children, as a result of exposure to depleted uranium, which is mildly radioactive, and uranium itself is a toxic element. Have there been anything like that? Any kind of research on that? And if so, has the Japanese government let that out?
Well, big picture, the Japanese government and the academic nuclear medical complex is trying to downplay the problems as much as they can get away with. But there are alarming findings having to do with childhood thyroid pathology, which would be the radioactive iodine-131 from the radioactive releases. Workers, for sure, there have been documented cases of leukemia, for example, among cleanup workers. So they're trying not to do the studies as they often do, but, one voice from University of Tokyo said, hey, if we dump all this wastewater in the ocean, we can't track where it goes. We won't know the health impacts. And sure enough, bioaccumulation in the seafood supply would harm not just the Japanese population, but any population eating Pacific seafood. But they don't do the health studies. They don't want to know.
So explain how bioaccumulation works and why we on the west coast of America might be concerned if we're just fishing locally, essentially, or buying, fish that are taken out of the U.S. coastal Pacific.
Well, the pro-nuclear Japanese government and Tokyo Electric would have you believe that dilution is the solution to radioactive pollution. Mm-hmm. The part they don't mention is that the food chain reconcentrates the radioactive pollution, and human beings are on the top of that food chain. So you could be exposed to tritium or radioactive cesium in your seafood, and there's very little to no monitoring, at least in certain countries, including the United States. There's very little monitoring of how bad the contamination is in the seafood supply. So they're treating it like the accident hadn't happened.
Yeah, so my understanding of how this would work is, the radioactive material gets into the ocean at an atomic or molecular level. It's absorbed by plant life in the ocean and small bottom-feeding animal life and krill and things like that. That gets eaten by small fish. The small fish get eaten by larger fish. The larger fish get eaten by bigger fish still. And by the time you get up to something like 1,000-pound tuna, it has really reconcentrated, to use your description. Am I accurately characterizing this?
You're right. And something like radioactive cesium concentrates in muscle tissue. So that's, where it goes in the fish, in their flesh, and then that's what humans eat.
And do some of those fish,
our muscle.
And do some of those fish migrate from as far away as Japan to the west coast of the United States?
Incredibly enough, bluefin tuna gestating off the coast of Fukushima swam across the ocean, and by August of 2011, there was radioactive tuna swimming and living on the west coast of North America. That's how quickly it came here.
Wow. So just to wrap this up, we're talking with Kevin Kamps, the radioactive waste specialist at BeyondNuclear.org. What can we in America do who are alarmed by this? And of course, this raises the issue of to what extent are American nuclear plants similar in design and function to Fukushima?
We have about 30 identical or very closely related General Electric Mark I and Mark II boiling water reactors in the United States. So An effective thing for Americans to do is contact your U.S. representative and both your U.S. senators and urge them to do everything in their power to shut down these Fukushima twin designs before the worst happens here in the United States. But larger picture, shut down all atomic reactors. They all have their pathways to meltdown. The high-level radioactive waste storage pools have their pathways to fire. We need to shut it down.
Yeah, amen. BeyondNuclear.org is the website and the Twitter handle. Kevin Kamps, the radioactive waste specialist. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Tom.
Always great talking with you. We'll be right back. We'll get back to some of our other topics of the day right after this. Stick around. It's 43 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more here on the Thom Hartmann Program, your media support group for We the People. And welcome back. Diane in White Plains, New York. Hey, Diane, thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up?
Hello, Tom. First, a great big thank you to you, your wife, and staff for doing such great hard work. So very much appreciated. My comment today is based on a comment earlier today. Naomi Klein was on Democracy Now! And she talked about how she felt that there was a lost opportunity for progressives because of what's happened in the elections. And I just wanted to say that I feel that Bernie and Elizabeth Warren were unwittingly set up to be divided, and it started after, I think was the third debate, where just before the debate, the corporate press released a story about how they supposedly had a private conversation where Bernie supposedly said a woman couldn't be elected. And of course, that question came up during the debate. Elizabeth Warren tried to not play into it, but she said that he did.
Yeah.
To minimize it. Thank you. That's the word, to minimize it. And Bernie also tried to minimize it. Well, right afterwards was that supposed hot mic moment where and I heard it, I watched all the debates where she said, "Did you just call me a liar on national television?"
Right.
Well, that's where they were set up to be divided. And I feel, and what happened is that kind of poisoned the well between them because they were good friends. Now,
yeah, it was, and it was also kind of like the Dean Scream in that it was largely media created.
Yes, and what followed behind that was what I feel was a Trump infiltrator who is supposedly a Bernie supporter, because anybody can say they're a Bernie supporter, that supposedly called her a snake. And everybody accepted that. Well, first of all, I don't believe that was a Bernie supporter. I really do believe that was a Trump infiltrator. And I'm thinking of things like, Project Veritas, that kind of thing.
Right.
And
Eric Prince is actually hiring foreign spies to work with right-wing groups to infiltrate left-wing groups.
Yes, I remember.
This is in the New York Times 4 days ago.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that. And so with that, the fact that it was never challenged, that no, I don't believe a Bernie supporter, just being a Bernie supporter, you would not by your nature say something like that.
Well, Diane, let's acknowledge that there are fools and idiots out there reflecting every conceivable political perspective. And so I think if somebody comes along and says, I'm a Bernie supporter and she's a snake, the response of the media should be, oh, well, it's another crackpot, supporter. Not all of his supporters seem to be crackpots, which is the take that they took. I mean, there are crackpot Biden supporters. Come on.
I agree with you. I'm sorry. Because I know that you go very quickly with your calls. I just want to say, think about what Trump recently called Governor Jay Inslee.
Called him a snake.
Exactly.
Of Washington State.
And so it's part of that their vernacular. And so unfortunately, and I'm just connecting dots here. And so unfortunately to me, what's happened is that the well got poisoned between the two of them. This is why she's been reluctant to perhaps join forces with Bernie. And here we are.
Yeah, I think your analysis is spot on, Diane. Diane, thank you so much for the call, and your points all well made and well said. It's 47 minutes, coming up on 48 minutes past the hour. We'll be picking up your calls right after this. Stick around. Hey, did you know that Hillary Clinton actually won Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida in the 2016 election? It's on page 92 of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Judy in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Hey, Judy, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to give your listeners a very real and up-close view of the ineptness of the federal government on this whole response. My husband is a dentist. They use masks on a daily basis for everybody on their staff, hygienists, assistants, dentists. You're spraying, you're directly in people's mouths. It's impossible to tell if somebody has the virus unless they're exhibiting symptoms, which obviously would not treat somebody. But the masks are, at this point, virtually impossible to find. Yeah, my friend who's a dentist in Washington, D.C., who's been a guest on this program, in fact, June Kim is his name, he sent me an email like 2 weeks ago saying he couldn't get masks. And as a dentist, he uses a fresh mask for every single patient. You have to, by CDC guidelines, you have to, and especially now. And they want you to use the N95 mask in emergency situations if somebody is exhibiting cold. Those are completely unavailable. But they, for a month now, they've been limiting the orders because people are buying them and unscrupulously selling them online. All that being said, I spent 4 hours this morning calling the county, the state of Michigan, everywhere I could to try to figure out answers on these masks that Pence keeps saying are going out. Where are they? How do we get some? I think they're being hoarded. I think there are a lot of people who don't need masks who are buying them, and probably a lot of medical institutions are buying up all they can. I understand there's a 3M factory in Minnesota that makes them, and they're trying to increase production. But the other thing that I've heard, and I can't verify this, but again, this was a comment made to me by my friend the dentist, is that a concern that a lot of these masks were actually made in China and were being imported into the United States, and Chinese imports into the U.S. are down because China's dealing with their own problem, and they're certainly not going to be exporting masks right now. And there's a worldwide demand. Judy, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Randall in Minneapolis. Hey, Randall, what's up?
Thanks, Tom. I was just summarizing what Trump's doing, and it compares very much to George W.'s actions with 9/11. He saw it coming, he knew it was coming, and he let it happen for his benefit. And that's well documented, by the way. That's not an attack on George W. Bush. Sandy Berger said that right here on this program. Sandy was the national security advisor to Bill Clinton and Al Gore. And Clinton told Bush, Sandy said on this program, and Gore told Cheney, and Sandy himself told Condoleezza Rice that bin Laden is coming for you. It needs to be your top national security program. He's planning to attack the United States. And then on August 5th, the CIA flew a guy down to Texas and gave George W. Bush a briefing that was titled Al-Qaeda determined to strike inside the United States. And yes, they ignored all of that. Bush put Cheney in charge of his counterterrorism task force, and they didn't meet until a week before 9/11. That entire year was just blown away. And, I agree with you, Randall. I think what Trump is doing right now with the coronavirus is largely the same thing. This is another Republican disaster. Mike in Minneapolis. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Just wanted to remind you of something you had mentioned as far as Daniel Ortega was concerned, the things that the Bush administration was doing down there and drawing attention. As a matter of fact, in the lame duck portion of the elder Bush's presidency, it was looking very much like he was going to be facing charges on all of this as soon as he stepped out of the White House.
That's correct.
But this was the same charges that before the internet was there, it was I believe it was actually on Christmas Eve. But,
yeah, and they'd already gotten convictions on Weinberger and Ollie North and a couple of other people, and it was right. Bill Barr, who is the Attorney General, who said pardon these guys and shut down the investigation. Bill Barr did that. I've written several articles about this, and in fact, it's in my book on the Supreme Court.
And this is what I wanted to make sure got mentioned because, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
There you go.
Bill Barr is still there doing it for his class of people.
Yep.
So.
Yep. You got it.
That's how that works.
Okay, you got it. Mike, thanks a lot for listening to KTNF, and thanks for the call. Paul in Woodinville, Washington. Hey, Paul, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I wanted to talk about the numbers are actually more striking than what's being discussed on TV because they're talking about the doubling of infections, every whatever the period is.
Are you talking here in the United States or worldwide or what?
Well, here in the United States.
Okay.
Okay, so you heard it discussed that if you have one person, then tomorrow you have 2 new infections, then the following day you have 4 new infections, but that doesn't mean 4 people are infected. Now you have 7 people infected.
Correct.
Like put a penny on the calendar on March 1st, put 2 pennies on March 2nd, put 4 pennies on March 3rd, and 8 on March 4th, 16 on March 5th. You now have 31 pennies on the calendar.
Right.
So you have more. It's not just the last square that you put it on. That's how many. It's the sum total of how many.
You're absolutely right, and that reality is almost completely lost in the discussions about exponential growth.
Right. You're actually integrating the exponential function, and that, by the way, Tom, if I could just quickly transition to Medicare for all, they talk about how Bernie's numbers are 57 trillion. Well, I just calculated what our present rate of growth is. So the system that we have now will be at least 75 trillion in the next 10 years. Because at this point, 2020, we are spending $4 trillion. It's 19.2. Our national health care expense is 19.2% of GDP, and that's about $4 trillion. But it will increase again next year by 10% because these are Ezekiel Emanuel's numbers.
Right.
You add 2% of GDP every year. We've been doing this for 50 years. Add 2% of GDP, which is $400 billion, which is now 10% of the $4 trillion. So we're increasing, our healthcare is increasing at 10% per year. And on year 10 from right now, our expenditure will be 10.3 trillion per year, but you have to add in all the subsequent years before, just like I just explained. You have to add 4 trillion this year, 4.4 trillion next year, 4.48 trillion the next year, 5.2 trillion the following year, up for 10 years. And I came up with $75 trillion at least, if that's the growth stays constant. So that's $17 trillion more than the 57 trillion that they were going, Bernie's over 57 trillion, where are you going to get that? Well, my question is, where are we going to get this?
Right. Well, we're going to get it out of the pockets and out of the hide of American consumers. I mean, that's the name of the game: is have the middle class pay for everything and then bankrupt them when they're old. I see these ads on TV for reverse mortgages. Oh yeah, you've got some equity in your house, we can take that. And
well, you know what?
Go ahead.
Ezekiel Emanuel says within 20 years, I don't care who you try to stick for the money at this current system, we won't be able to pay for anything except health care, nothing else.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And by the way, the other thing that just every time I hear this ad for reverse mortgages, where Tom Selleck, I think it is, and they're a legitimate thing, but he says you can use them to pay for medical expenses, and I'm yelling back at the TV, going, "What the hell? Medical? We should not have to do that." Paul, thank you for the call. We should not have to wipe out the equity that we've built in our homes throughout our entire lives to pay for damn medical expenses. It just shouldn't be in the richest country in the world. Although we're the richest country in the world because 3 men own as much wealth as the bottom 50% of Americans. 3 Americans. So yeah, we're the richest country in the world, but what does that mean? Anyhow, we'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It needs you. So get out there, get active, tag You're It, and tell your friends where they can find progressive media. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
So it's Wednesday, and special new premium with a $30 gift. You get a roll of Trump toilet paper. It doesn't get better than that, because this is the guy who brought us the coronavirus epidemic here in the United States. People are dying because of this man in the White House. 2 years ago, they shut down the offices in the Department of Homeland Security and the National Security Council that were in charge of dealing with pandemic diseases. Why did he shut them down? Well, because Barack Obama put them into place during the Ebola epidemic, or maybe it was during the swine flu epidemic in 2009. I mean, this is terrible. So please, call now, vote by telephone, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV, and get your free speech or your Donald Trump toilet paper.
We say fight back!
Days to go. It's Wednesday, and we have a new premium.